part of your infrastructure.
This year's Nobel Prize in Physiology of Medicine.
Every fraction of a degree means more hunger, displacement, and loss.
In a world defined by rapid change, shifting alliances, and transformative ideas, one question echoes across borders. What does the future look like from here? Welcome to WION World Pulse, the leaders' confluence capturing the rhythm of a new world order. It brings together global decision makers, innovators, policymakers, and visionaries under one roof to decode the forces shaping tomorrow. 7 dynamic sessions strive for an answer: how to make this world a better place to live in. In times of turbulence, Power Pulse sheds light on the rebalancing of global power. How can new alliances shape international diplomacy? With new alliances come new trade partners. At Economy Pulse, we explore the future of global trade, evolving supply chains, and new equations reshaping trust, resilience, and economic collaboration. A large part of every country's economy is spent on building robust military capabilities. At Defense Pulse, leaders and strategists unpack the realities of future warfare and the strategic imperatives defining global security. And it is the technology that is the game changer of today's warfare. At Tech Pulse, innovation meets responsibility. Join experts as they debate artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, data privacy, and the emerging space economy. But do all these transformations come at a cost? With Planet Pulse, we confront one of humanity's biggest questions: how to balance growth with sustainability, and how climate geopolitics will reshape global priorities. And as we look forward to making a better world, at Healthcare Pulse, we take a deep dive into pioneers exploring the medicine of tomorrow. Breakthrough biotechnology and new models for a safer, healthier world. And lastly, we will have the Auto Pulse. We look ahead to the future of mobility, where electric, connected, and autonomous technologies redefine how the world moves. The world is changing faster than ever, and today, the conversation about tomorrow begins here. Welcome to WION World Pulse, the rhythm of the new world order.
And to officially open WION World Pulse 2026, it is both my honor and a privilege to introduce a visionary widely regarded as the architect of India's private television revolution, a pioneer, a nation builder, and the man who transformed an idea into an industry. Dr. Subhash Chandra, the founder and mentor of Zee Group and former Rajya Sabha member. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Subhash Chandra to deliver the inaugural address of WION World Plus.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Friends from... Can somebody stop this? Please request the hotel to stop this conversation. Friends from the industry, defense, our friends from diplomatic corps, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I remember some of the events in the life cycle of right from beginning or before Zee was born in 1992. Legal experts in India told me in end of 1990, when this idea of starting a private sector television in India was germing in my mind, that you cannot do it in India because the laws of the land do not permit private sector television, nor you can download the signal of television from a foreign satellite. So my innocent question was that how come we are watching CNN during the Gulf War? If you recollect, the Gulf War had started towards the third, fourth quarter of 1990 and was going on till February of 1991. So they said, yeah, and it was probably the first televised war, I would say, of the world. And I recollect that a lot of friends used to go to five-star hotels and sit there and watch the Gulf War because the satellite dish normally was being put in the hotels for the foreign guests. So it was available in the hotels. So that thing that CNN is a news network covering events across the globe stayed in my mind. Just a thought crossed at that time, why can't India have such a news network? But then, that time the thought was only just a fraction of a second because I was working on launching Zee as an entertainment network that time. And later on, an event which took place in a hotel just close by, and it was 18th of December 2005, when my friend Raghav Bahel was launching CNN IBN. And that was inaugurated by the then Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. And I was sitting with him, chatting with him, and that thought came to my mind, and I told him, sir, we should also have something similar like CNN for India. And he asked me a few questions. And while answering them, I said that CNN was launched in America in 1980 with $1 billion funds from Pentagon. Oh, he said, yeah, is it? Yes. I said, yes, sir. I said, we must have in India also, but cannot be done by a private party because it requires lots of money. He asked a few more questions, and I thought that that was the end of it. But surprisingly, I got a call from PMO in next couple of days. And we started talking, and I gave them a lot of details, told them how Zee network can help. By then, Zee, which was launched in 1992, had spread its wings across the globe in more than 170 countries that time, with about 350 million viewers outside India. And I mentioned to them that it will take about $400 million that time. That time dollar was 45 rupees. I said it will take about 1,500 to 1,800 crore in 3-4 years to establish such a network. And surprisingly, 500 crore was earmarked in the budget of 2007. I don't know how many people know about it. Even my friend Anurag Batra is sitting here. He knows everything what happens in the media. So, but that time, as expected, there were at least 12 people who were wanting to claim that 500 crore to launch an international network. Everybody then said, I can do it and I'm more capable than Zee and everything. Eventually, friends, that money was lapsed, and PMO told me one day that, sorry, we are abandoning the project because we cannot give to anybody who cannot launch it properly, and they will not let you take. Thought never died from my mind. And on 14th May 2017, Vion was launched by Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, on the occasion which had seen our group, Essel Group's 90th year celebration. By the way, we will be just completing in this year 100 years of our group's business existence. So friends, as the name suggests, word is one news. That is how detailed name of Vion is. That has been designed based on the spirit and inspirations from Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Many of you are aware, if my friends from diplomatic corps and foreign countries, for your knowledge, it was first time Swami Vivekananda gave this thought into a religious parliament in the United States of America. Hence, the spirit of Vion are also anchored in this timeless philosophy of Bharat. Today's summit, Vion's Pulse, hopefully will capture this spirit our world needs the most in these troubled times. I know that we have a show in Vion which is named as World at War. Though currently we have 3 regions that probably at war, and all the diplomatic members from these 3 regions are present here today. But I would say that this decade, which started from 2001, and I would say ending at 2030, is a most decisive decade of our times. And this is a decade which will redefine and reshape the entire geopolitics, economics, power equation, power bases, and even supply chains to that extent. This summit of Vion Pulse seeks to decode this moment as the future is shaped by the signals of present. Wars and conflicts are making the headlines and dominating the conversation in these days. In contrast to these are happening in the contrast to the concept of Vion. Strategic rivalries are shaping alliances and institutions. Narratives are increasingly divided along geopolitical lines, which brings us to the fundamental question for the global media, and that is, if the world is one family, are we behaving like one? That's the major question. Friends, India, until the end of 20th century, wasn't a very significant player in the geopolitical narrative, but today it is. No one can ignore the 1.4 billion strong nation, with not only growing its own economy in domestic terms, which is far better than anywhere, most of the countries in the world, but it also playing a decisive role in global economy through its talented pool of human resource. There isn't any large corporation in the world where the Indian talents are not involved. Hence, the governments and the other three pillars of the society will have to keep the flag of the narrative to give centuries ago's Vasudev Kutumbakam a fillip, and that is very much required in today's time. I would say that in such a world, the responsibility of legacy media becomes even more significant. We are living in an era of information overload, where social media, algorithms, and instant commentary shape perception at extraordinary speed. Legacy media like Zee News, Vion, carries the responsibility to provide context in moment of crisis, distinguish facts from noise, and ensure that complex global developments are understood with clarity and speed by its viewers across the globe. At a time when narratives can easily become polarized, journalism must strive to inform without inflaming and connect rather than divide. My friends at Diplomatic Corps who are present here, I would say that the diplomacy needs the credible global platforms like Vion. In a fractured and rapidly evolving world, diplomacy and dialogue need credible platforms. Policymakers, strategists, and thinkers need spaces where ideas can be exchanged openly and perspectives can be understood across the borders. I'm sure today you all are sitting under the same roof when there is a conflict going around in your territories, in your countries. But I hope the Vion Pulse will give you some perspective for you to report to your counterparts in your countries. With this, I would say that in doing so, we will strengthen the ecosystem of global dialogue, understanding, and cooperation. Ultimately, friends, the purpose of Vion and Vion World Pulse is simple: to listen to the pulse of our times, because the future of global order will not be shaped by one nation or one narrative alone. It will be shaped by how the world understands itself today. And if the idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which if still resonates, then forums like these becomes essential spaces where that family can come together, exchange ideas, and reflect on the path ahead. With this, welcome and thank you again for coming and joining us in these times, and hopefully when we meet next chapter of Vion Pulse, we will have better and peaceful times ahead. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for kickstarting this extremely significant Vion World Pulse 2026 that we are hosting in times of conflict, as Dr. Chandra spoke about. And we are, of course, awaiting the arrival of Mr. Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, Union Minister for Tourism and Culture. But let's also tell you what all we have lined up today for you. There are several sessions that will be happening through the day today. Interesting conversations from global voices, policymakers, strategists, all of them will be here, converging here to make sure that we not just simplify complex geopolitical and geo-economic issues for you, but also find a solution forward, find a way forward. And that is why we are getting you, conversations on diplomacy, on geopolitics, on the wars that are happening, on the conflicts, on the economics that is now surrounding the geopolitics and diplomacy of our times. We're also going to be talking about, the economy, tariffs, and of course, whether it's auto, it's climate change, all of these issues that we are grappling with. But take a look at some of the sessions that we'll have today.
Global policymakers, global military leaders, global strategists, 7 pulsating themes. One global stage.
It's about the support that those terrorist groups.
LTT has been wiped out.
Afghanistan would expect India.
This Hafiz Saeed issue.
Deepest disappointment and concern.
दुनिया पहले 2 कैंप में 2 खाने मुसलमान दुश्मन दो या अपने
To political activists.
So long as my country.
From the conversations that mattered to capturing the pulse for the future. travels to meet with America. In an ever-changing, fast-paced world, identifying the pulse of global happenings is important. Because it is the pulse that truly measures the real nature of world events. It monitors the shifting geopolitical landscapes and anticipates what lies ahead. At WION World Pulse 2026, we tap into the heartbeat of events that matter to you and to the world. 7 pulsating themes, 100 plus thought leaders, 1 dynamic platform. WION World Pulse. The rhythm of the new world order.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker of this morning. Please welcome Sri Lankan parliamentarian, former minister, Sri Lanka and current MP, as well as the national organizer, SLPP, Sri Namal Rajapaksa.
When it comes to young leaders in Sri Lanka's politics, the name Lakshman Namal Rajapaksa stands out. A scion of the Rajapaksa family, the eldest son was born on April 10, 1986. But before his tryst with politics like his elders, Namal Rajapaksa had a distinguished sports career in rugby. He converted his love for the sport into leadership as captain of the college rugby team during his time at Cardiff University and City University, London. His talent and dedication to rugby paved the way back to his home, Sri Lanka, where he played for the National Rugby Union team. He also became its captain in 2013 and subsequently retired in July 2014. In 2018, he led a week-long rugby training workshop in Srinagar for the Jammu and Kashmir girls rugby team. By this time, Namal Rajapaksa had already entered Sri Lanka's political arena, overlapping with his sports career. In 2010, he was elected to parliament after winning the seat in Hambantota district, a constituency which his father, the former president of Sri Lanka, Mahinda Rajapaksa, once represented. A promising debut, the victory marked Namal Rajapaksa's arrival in mainstream politics. In the years that followed, Namal Rajapaksa's role in the party and Sri Lanka's political landscape grew exponentially. He served as the country's Minister of Youth and Sports from 2020 to 2022. In 2024, he was appointed as national organizer of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Party. Empowering Sri Lanka's youth and promoting economic prosperity for all remain the key goals and foundational ethos of Namal Rajapaksa's political journey.
WION. Excellencies, members of the diplomatic community, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to address you today at the WION Global Summit, the Pulse. This forum brings together voices from across the world to discuss the forces shaping our global future. And we meet at a time when the global system is going through a major transformation. Trade routes are being disrupted. Technology competition is reshaping power between nations. Wars continue in different parts of the world. And the institutions that once guided global cooperation are being tested like never before. The world that emerged after the Cold War, a world defined by economic integration and relative stability, is now changing. We are entering what can be described as a world of shared and shifting powers, where geography matters again. Strategic regions that were once seen as distinct or secondary are now becoming center to global politics. One of those regions is the Indian Ocean. For thousands of years, Indian Ocean was not a zone of conflict. It was a bridge between civilizations. Merchants, scholars, and travelers crossed these waters long before modern geopolitics existed. Ideas moved across the ocean. Cultures interacted. Trade flourished between Asia, Africa, and Middle East. The Indian Ocean connected societies rather than dividing them. The relationship between India and Sri Lanka is one of the oldest examples of that connection. More than 2,000 years ago, the teachings of Lord Buddha traveled from India to Sri Lanka. That journey was not just spread of philosophy. It was a beginning of a deep civilizational relationship that still shapes our society today. Trade routes links our ports. Cultural exchange shaped our traditions. And over centuries, our people built a relationship that remains one of the strongest in the Indian Ocean region. Today, Indian Ocean is once again becoming center for global economic and strategic activities. Nearly 2/3 of global oil shipments pass through its waters. Approximately half of the world's containers moves along its sea lanes. The undersea cables that carry the digital lifeline of the global economy runs along the seabed. Energy flows through it. Supply chains depend on it. Global commerce relies on it. Indian Ocean has become one of the most important economic highways in the world. And when these highways are threatened, the consequences are felt across the entire globe. Recent global events remind us how fragile this stability can be. Tensions in the Middle East continues to influence energy markets and global security. And strategic rivalry between major powers is increasingly visible in maritime regions. When instability appears in one region, it impacts quickly, spreads throughout global trade routes. Energy prices rise, supply chain slows down, market reacts. And once again, the stability of the Indian Ocean becomes critical. Located at the center of these sea routes, Sri Lanka holds one of the most strategic positions in the Indian Ocean. Ships traveling between East Asia, Middle East, and Europe pass just south of our shores. For centuries, Sri Lankan ports served as a trading hub connecting civilizations. Today, same geography places Sri Lanka at a crossroad of global commerce. But geography alone does not create influence. Influence comes from how wisely a nation manages its positions. For centuries, in strategically sensitive regions, foreign policy must be guided by balance, foresight, and discipline. We must protect our sovereignty. We must safeguard our maritime space. We must also build strong partnership with all nations. Strategic balance is not weakness. For smaller states, it is a necessity. In this changing global landscape, India's rise is one of the most important developments of the 21st century. India's economic growth, technological innovation, and demographic strength are reshaping the Indian Pacific region. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India is emerging not only as a major economic power, but also as a stabilizing force in the Indian Ocean. For neighboring countries like Sri Lanka, this creates great opportunities. Our futures are naturally connected. Sri Lanka's strategic location and infrastructure complements India's economic scale. Together, our countries can strengthen regional stability and prosperity. There are several areas where this partnership can grow. Firstly, maritime security. Strategic cooperation and regional safety are essential to ensure secure maritime routes. India's growing naval capability and Sri Lanka's location create a natural partnership to keep these routes open and secure. Secondly, regional connectivity. Strategic infrastructure and Sri Lanka's geographical location will help the countries grow as a logistic, energy, maritime, financial, and aviation services hub supporting regional trade. Strengthened by India's national green hydrogen mission and cooperation, investment, our partnership can forge a South Asia's hydrogen corridor that secured energy, drives innovation, and makes the Indian Ocean a hub of sustainable power. Third, the blue economy. Together, our countries can promote marine research, sustainable fisheries, ocean technology, and renewable ocean energy. Another major feature of this emerging global order is competition in technology. Artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, digital infrastructure, space technology. These are no longer just economic sectors. They are strategic domains that will shape global power in the decades ahead. For developing nations, the challenge is to ensure that technology creates opportunity, not inequality, and that regional cooperation will be essential. My generation inherits the responsibility to navigate global change. Not merely to react to it, but to shape the world where cooperation overweights rivalry and international law guide stability. The Indian Ocean must remain what it has always been at its best, a bridge between civilizations. India, Sri Lanka, and the countries of the Indian Ocean region must work together to ensure that these waters remain open, secure, and cooperative. Because if the Indian Ocean is stable, the global economy will be stable. If the Indian Ocean prospers, the region will prosper. For centuries, this ocean shaped our past. In the decades ahead, it will shape the future of the world. And it is the responsibility of our generation to ensure that it remains. The ocean of peace and cooperation and shared responsibility, prosperity. Thank you. Teruvan Sarnai.
Thank you, Mr. Rajapaksa, for really, giving us a perspective on not just the India-Sri Lanka relationship, but the entire Indo-Pacific region. My colleague Mohammad Saleh takes this conversation forward with Mr. Rajapaksa.
Thank you very much, Shreya. So let me, in fact, invite our Managing Editor, Robin Sharma, to come up on stage and present the bouquet and memento to Namal Rajapaksa. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we live in interesting times. There could have been happier times, but unfortunately there are a lot of conflicts that are taking place around the world that are shaping our world. And Namal, you spoke extensively on, the opportunities and also the challenges, where geography in many ways defines our destiny. And Sri Lanka is, of course, very geostrategically placed. But I want to start off by asking you, at this moment, what has captured the imagination of a lot of people is this war that has broken out in the Middle East that has been waging for the last 18 days that will have global ramifications if it has not already started to have one. But the incident that happened just 40 nautical miles off the coast of Sri Lanka, where the Americans torpedoed an Iranian warship, Iris Dina. You are one of those individuals who spoke out very prominently about it. Tell us, how did Sri Lanka feel about the fact that an incident of this magnitude actually happened so close to your coast?
Well, as you know, Sri Lanka was one of those countries who promoted, who initiated non-aligned movement at that time, and also who was a very advocate of it. And also we strongly believe that the Indian Ocean must remain as a zone of peace and non-conflict. So it was disturbing to know that the war has reached our shores as well, starting from the Gulf to Indian Ocean. So I think this is where the Indian Ocean nations must work together. And I believe one way forward, out of many options that we have, is going to be the Colombo Security Conclave that was initiated in 2011. And the Secretariat must be established, and maritime domain awareness is something that is very important at this given stage as a region. And I think the impact is all over the place. I mean, it's not only to Sri Lanka, but one fact that we must keep in mind, that there's a precedent now. So the war, technology, military advancement is not only with the governments on today's context. And if you recall, we have gone through a war for 30 years, and LTT had submersibles at that time, and they had 2 torpedoes as well. And one was recovered, and one was tested apparently, and one was recovered. It's in the Trincomalee Naval Base. So you see different organizations with military technology. So a precedent in Indian Ocean, it's alarming, and it's something I personally believe that the region must take it very seriously, and to make sure things like that doesn't happen here in the future.
Now, the ramifications of what is happening, the global conflicts are immense. A lot of people say the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is shut, if it continues to remain shut, it can plunge the global economy into a recession. Sri Lanka is dependent for nearly 37% of all crude that it consumes, and it comes from the Strait of Hormuz. What is your plan? Do you have a contingency as to how you want to overcome the challenge that if 37% of your crude is cut off, that is going to be catastrophic?
Well, I mean, it's not a single challenge only to Sri Lanka, but for the region as well. And I'm sure the government at the moment...
No, I ask you this because you're from Sri Lanka, so what is your contingency plan? Yeah.
Well, our government is engaging with various stakeholders, various partners, and also with India as well, to make sure that our supply chains keep intact. And I think it is high time that they have a long-term strategy, and this is something that we would have thought 20 years ago about completing the fuel tanks what we have, and also looking for renewable energy sources to be expanded in Sri Lanka. But unfortunately, as you know, in subcontinent, certain domestic politics keeps on changing, the policies keep on changing. But I think at the moment, it's about engaging and making sure that the nations that can influence for a peaceful settlement must engage aggressively to make sure that the conflict at least go on a hold for a period of time. And then countries like us must make sure that we engage with our friendly neighbors and friendly partners to make sure that the supply chain continues.
Right now, India 2022, that's not a year that people in Sri Lanka will forget. There was what was called the Sri Lankan Revolution, or the struggle of the Sri Lankan people to overcome the economic hardships. They were unhappy with the government that was there at that moment. Now, you're from this very prominent Sri Lankan family that was in power at that moment. How defining do you think that year 2022 was? How does that change the politics of Sri Lanka? And how do you take things forward from there? Do you think things have improved? Because a lot of people said that they wanted growth. Sri Lanka in the last couple of years has grown at a rate of about 5%. Do you think enough has been done? What more could be done?
Well, see, 2022 crisis, it did not happen in isolation. It was a series of incidents that took place from 2015. And if you recall, we had East attacks in 2019-18. And then we went through the COVID. And 80 countries like Sri Lanka were suffering from the impact that happened from the COVID. And as you know, Sri Lanka is heavily depending on foreign remittance and tourism. So, and top of that, as you know, there are many claims and allegations by the US government itself, the President Trump itself, regarding regime change in our part of the world and how the USAID funded. So taking all these into consideration, I believe it's moving forward. It's about planning for a longer term, especially to make sure that our energy security is maintained and our food security is maintained. And I think after 2022, all political parties in Sri Lanka started redefining themselves, rethinking themselves, and realigning themselves into the modern context, because you see there is a rapid change in the voting pattern as well. So it's a question whether we are actually keeping up with the modern demands of the modern society, or are we following the traditional pathway of development and infrastructure.
My final question to you, Namal, is this. You are also a rugby player. Now, Sri Lanka, as we know, like India, is a cricket-crazy nation. How did you get involved in rugby? What actually made you, start playing rugby? This is unusual. There are very few politicians who play a sport professionally, and here you are, you play rugby, and this is the images that we've gotten behind what is on the screen. How did you get involved in rugby? And you also told me a little while ago that your family, there are a number of people who play rugby. Tell us more about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, see, my father's family is into politics, and we are a dynastical political family from that end. But from my mother's side, my great-grandfather was in the Royal Navy, and they all played rugby at that time for Ceylon. So from him to my mother's two brothers, their two children, and my two brothers. So altogether, we have about 7 in the family, from my great-grandfather, from my mother's side, who has represented Ceylon or Sri Lankan rugby, including myself. So for some reason, when I was 10 years old, I took my second brother to play rugby. Then when he saw everyone was too big, because he was 9 years and I was 10 years, and the rest of the people were all 15, 16 years. So one of us had to remain there. So then I decided, okay, let me go and start first and see how it goes. And well, it took me to the national level, and my two brothers also played for Sri Lanka, and I played for UNI in UK as well. So it's something very close to my heart. And I think someone has to do something different, right? So I think we decided to choose rugby over cricket.
That's very interesting. Namal Rajapaksa, one of the most prominent politicians in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for taking time out and coming to us and meeting with us here in Vion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, you want to take questions? One quick question. Go ahead. Yeah. Can we get the...
Thank you. Good morning, Excellency. My name is Colonel Mayank Chaubey. I had the privilege of being trained along with Sri Lankan cadets in the Indian Military Academy. I had 31 course mates, and the present Army Chief is my course mate. We were 31 cadets in all who came to our academy for training. Do you intend increasing the numbers? Because I don't see those many numbers currently. Military diplomacy plays a very important role in improving relations between two countries. Thank you so much.
Well, I do agree with you, because Indian training has been very much prominent in the Sri Lankan system for decades. And I think right after the LTT defeat, after we won the battle against LTT terrorism, our military strategies might have changed. We did change to the modern context. And the training methods and our approach has been changed. And also I believe, as you see what's happened in the Indian Ocean at the moment, what happened in the past couple of weeks, and also the challenges that we face as a region, we need to realign and re-strategize, and also look at a strategic communication mechanism to keep intact with the regional cooperation and regional partners. And yes, I believe we must increase, and we must also make sure that the military diplomacy is something that is important for our nation, and especially on modern context. Thank you.
I think that's very well said. Cooperation and diplomacy is the way forward. Thank you very much indeed, Namal Rajapaksa.
A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Rajapaksa. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have among us today India's Minister of Tourism and Culture, Mr. Gajendra Singh Shekhawat.
India's soft power is rooted in its civilization, culture, and diversity. At the forefront of translating this soft power into tangible socio-economic impact is Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat. As Union Minister of Culture and Tourism, Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat firmly believes that it is India's cultural strength that offers the nation its most unique and enduring edge on the global stage. Born in 1967 in Rajasthan, Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat pursued a Master of Philosophy from Jai Narayan Vyas University in Jodhpur. It was in the same university where he rose to prominence in politics. Starting with the BJP student wing, the ABPP, he won the university president election in 1992. He later became the National General Secretary of the BJP Kisan Morcha, the farmers' wing of the Bharatiya Janata Party. In 2014, Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat was elected as a Member of Parliament to the 16th Lok Sabha from the Jodhpur constituency. Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat held various key positions, including Union Minister of State for Agriculture and Farmers' Welfare and Minister of Jal Shakti. As Minister of Culture and Tourism, Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat focuses on positioning India as a global tourism hub through sustainable tourism and cultural promotion. He has driven the Swadesh Darshan 2.0 scheme to develop sustainable destinations. Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat is also spearheading the development of the Yuga Yugin Bharat National Museum in New Delhi, which is envisioned as a living chronicle of India's 5,000-year-old civilization and is set to be the world's largest museum. From building national museums to restoring historical memorials and increasing tourism infrastructure, Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat is strengthening two of India's most key sectors, culture and tourism, as the nation continues to expand its cultural footprint on the world stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would now invite Mr. Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, Union Minister of Tourism and Culture, Government of India, to please address the gathering. Sir.
I think distinguished delegates, Excellencies, my gracious host, Ms. Molly Gambhir, ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you today not merely as a representative of a nation, but as a voice of civilization that has for millennia sought to understand the human condition in its fullest depth. India is often described as ancient, yet I submit India is not ancient in the sense of being old. India is ancient in the sense of being eternal renewing. It is a civilization that does not merely survive time, it converses with the time. From the hymns of Veda to the dialogues of Upanishad, from the pathways of Buddha to the reformative energies of modern India. Our journey has never been linear. It has been reflective, adaptive, and deeply humane. Ladies and gentlemen, the Upanishadic invocation reminds us, Tamsoma Jyotirgamaya, lead us from darkness to light. This is not merely a spiritual prayer, it is a civilizational doctrine, a commitment to move from ignorance to knowledge, from conflict to understanding, and from fragmentation or diversities to the unity. In the 21st century, the world stands at a crossroads, and the theme of today's conclave is also aligned with this. We are more connected than ever before, yet often more divided. We have achieved unprecedented material progress, yet face profound existential anxieties. It is in this context that India's civilizational wisdom offers not prescriptions, we give perspectives. India does not claim to have all the answers, but it offers a framework where dialogue replaces discord, and where balance replaces excess, and where humanity remains at the center of all progresses. The principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the word as one family, is not a slogan for us. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a lived philosophy. It has shaped our diplomacy. It has always the way of our development partnerships and our engagement with the global South, where through humanitarian assistance, digital public infrastructure, or capacity building initiatives, India's approach has always been guided by the idea that global progress must be inclusive. As the world's largest democracy, India represents a remarkable experiment of scale, diversity, and continuity. Our democracy is not merely institutional or the largest, it is oldest, and it is civilizational. It is rooted in the spirit of dialogue, our Shastrartha, of debate or participation. In India, diversity does not weaken democracy, it deepens it. And in an era where democratic values are being tested globally, India offers an enduring example of resilience with pluralism. Allow me now to turn on a dimension where India's civilizational ethos meets contemporary relevance most vividly: wellness and holistic living. Through the systems of Ayush, India offers a paradigm that is both ancient and futuristic. Ayurveda teaches us that health is not the absence of disease, but the presence of equilibrium. Yoga teaches us that well-being is not external acquisition, but inner alignment. In a world grappling with lifestyle disorders, mental stress, and ecological imbalance, these are not alternative ideas. They are essential frameworks for the future and the future of the world. Today, India is committed to taking these systems to the global stages through research, standardization, innovation, and international collaborations. Equally, in tourism, India is reimagining itself, not just as a destination, but as an experience of transformation. Because when one travels to India, one does not merely see landscapes or the natural beauties. One encounters layers of history, textures of different culture and cultural diversities, and depth of spirituality. From the ghats of Varanasi to the deserts of Rajasthan, from the temples of South to the monasteries of Himalayas, India offers journeys that are not just outward, but inward. Our vision is to position India as a global hub for cultural, spiritual, and wellness tourism, supported by world-class infrastructure, digital innovation, and sustainable practices under the able leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. What gives India a unique strength in this endeavor is its extraordinary ability to harmonize diversity. In India, plurality is not managed, it is celebrated. Languages change every few hundred kilometers. Customs evolve across regions, yet there is an underlying unity, a shared civilizational consciousness. This ability to hold multiplicity with unity is perhaps India's greatest gift to the world in present context. As we move toward the vision of Viksit Bharat 2047 under leadership and as envisaged by our Prime Minister, our aspirations are both ambitious and grounded. We seek to build an idea that is economically strong, culturally confident, technologically advanced, and globally responsible. Ladies and gentlemen, but above all, an India that remains deeply rooted in its civilizational values. Let me conclude with this reflection. The future of the world will not be shaped by power alone. It will be shaped by ideas, values, and by the ability to build trust and shared purpose. India's journey has always been about bringing together the material and the spiritual, the individual and the collective, the past and the future. And therefore, India does not seek to lead the world, it seeks to walk with the world. As our ancient prayer goes, Sarve bhavantu sukhine, Sarve santu niramaya. May all be happy, may all be free from illness. This is not merely a prayer, it is India's message to humanity. And looking towards the challenges what world facing today, now the Indian philosophy and the wisdom is more and more relevant in present context of the global disorders. With these words, I wish to submit. Thank you very much, and dhanyavad to the Vion for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. With that, my colleague Molly Gambhir will take this conversation forward with Minister Shekhawat.
For laying out the tourism roadmap, the present, past, and future, the theme Beyond World Pulse. So we are gauging the pulse of different sectors, specifically speaking about the tourism sector, sir. India's soft power, the pulse of India's soft power, tourism and culture is a major part of it. What would you say are the immediate focus areas for you when it comes to the vision and the roadmap ahead?
Thank you very much, Molly. As I mentioned in my speech also, that India has a millennia-old civilization, and it is a contiguity of civilization what we can offer. India being the most diverse country in the world, where the diversities of culture, craft, cuisine, nature, and the geographical landscapes are there. So in India, we have everything and anything which any tourist of the world can desire, from snow-capped Himalayas to the pristine blue flag beaches, from desert of my state, Rajasthan, to the tropical forest of Northeast, from wildlife and the diversity of wildlife, to the modern infrastructure what we have built for the MICE and tourism. From ancient wisdom-based yoga and meditation to the most modern medical and wellness infrastructure what we have created. So all the verticals of tourism, what one can desire, we have in our bouquet or in our platter to offer for them. See, India, as I mentioned during my keynote also, that we, being the oldest civilization and being the most contiguous civilization, our traditional wisdom, which was which was envisaged or experienced by our rishis, our munis, our saints, and our people with the wisdom, that has become more and more relevant in today's world. As the world is facing the challenges of climate change, the world is facing the challenges as an individual, as mental health or mental health disorders, or world is facing the challenges of the tensions, growing tensions between the countries or the different part of world. So India and Indian wisdom is the only solution, and we provide the solution. So we are the most relevant in today's world.
Indeed, sir. India, of course, has a lot to offer, and people have been also choosing to go in for domestic exploration instead of the usual foreign locations, now increasingly so. So, like any journey, there have been challenges that you have also overcome. What is the one challenge that you would like to speak about that you have encountered in this journey as you capitalize on India's tourism potential?
Being a tourism minister, if I say that our biggest challenge is we have many things to offer. When I was a traveler, as a student, I used to travel, or as a businessman, I used to travel. In the countries, most of the European countries, they have 1, 2, 3, 4 things, and they are the star objects which they wish to express or they wish to exhibit. But in our case, we have many more things to showcase. So our priority and focus is divided. But under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji for last 10 years, we have again initiated the work with a focus and with a clear-cut orientation that what need to be prioritized. And that way, since in India the tourism is, it has 2 aspects. One is domestic tourism, which is equally, or rather I should say more important to us, and the other way is inbound tourism. So for looking towards the both requirements, the Swadesh Darshan, the other scheme which fulfills the appetite of Indian spiritual tourist, or enhance the experience of spiritual tourism, because spiritual tourism in India is again a very big and relevant vertical, and it is continuously growing with the growth of economy and development of infrastructure. So we are looking towards both the challenges and the opportunities. We are working on the same.
Very insightful, sir, to listen in to your experience at the helm of what you've been doing, the challenges you've encountered, and the journey you've had so far, and what your vision for the future is for India's tourism roadmap. Thank you very much, sir, for those insightful words. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, I request Mr. Raktim Das, CEO, Zee Media Corporation Limited, to please present sir with a token of gratitude and appreciation. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Minister Shekhawat, who's been candid in his responses. He's been kind enough to answer our questions as far as India's tourism sector is concerned, its growth. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sir. It's okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Das, and thank you, Molly. It was indeed a perspective that we all perhaps wanted to understand about India's tourism sector, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, Minister Shekhawat's presence here only enriches our conversations as far as the vision for India's tourism is concerned, and this is something that we have been looking forward to.
Recognized as the father of modern financial derivatives in India, a driving force behind the modernization of India's financial infrastructure, Ashish Kumar Chauhan is not just an ordinary name in the finance sector. The Managing Director and CEO of the National Stock Exchange of India, a position he has held since July 2022. Chauhan has automated and transformed how India trades. He was instrumental in establishing the very core of the NSE's operations in the 1990s. Previously, Chauhan was the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of the Bombay Stock Exchange for a decade. The NSE's Nikkei index, screen-based trading and satellite communication were all pioneered by him. His priorities include improving the NSA's surveillance, technology and regulatory compliance. And now, Chauhan is directing the National Stock Exchange towards an IPO. Vion welcomes the risk-taker, the finance wizard who is changing the future course of Indian capital markets on the global stage.
All right, with that, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ashish Kumar Chauhan, Managing Director and CEO of the National Stock Exchange of India, one of the world's largest and most technologically advanced stock exchanges. My colleague Shivan Channa takes this forward.
So thank you so much for making time for us. It's absolute pleasure to speak with you. Let me quickly start with a quote of yours, and if you can explain that further. You don't need a balance sheet to build a business today. If you can elaborate on how NSE is helping in that.
I've watched the businesses go up, raising funds over the last 35 years. And I have seen companies from one people company to like 1 million people companies becoming $100 billion companies. And what I've seen is that in early days, 50 years back, 100 years back, you required a lot of money to create more money. It was called capitalism. Because very few people had that kind of money. Many of us did not want to become entrepreneurs because you required a lot of money to start with. Slowly, the technologies evolved. And then in early 90s, India started experimenting with newer style of businesses, which were IT-driven, where people from nowhere, just having some engineering degrees came, created businesses with very little capital invested. And they became worth $100 billion, $200 billion companies over the last 20, 30 years. And that allowed me to think through, saying earlier, capitalism required capital. Today, the capitalism doesn't require capital. And that's what I call it, the capitalism without capital, without balance sheet. You can create businesses. And over the last 35 years, we have seen companies which came with, like Infosys in 1993, which is one of the largest IT companies and one of the largest in the world, came with an IPO, which failed because nobody knew how IT business would work. Today, it's one of the largest companies in the world. And recently, we have seen Zomato, Swiggy, and many other people who came out of nowhere from Mofussil towns of India with no money at all. They started little small, without capital, without balance sheet, and they became worth 10, 20, 50 billion dollars personally, right? And I have seen that in banking, I have seen that in every sector. And that's why for me, the modern India, the modern technology allows you to create very large-scale businesses. If you persevere, if you have ideas, NSE will raise money for you. And so I say that if you want $100,000, I'll raise for you. And if you want $100 billion, I'll raise for you.
I think that's definitely going to resonate with a lot of people here, sir. But I also wanted to quickly get your understanding on this. Today, many stocks are perhaps trading at their rock bottom. If anybody who's willing to perhaps enter the market at this point, would you reckon this is a good time to buy? Who better to ask you than this?
Yeah, I'm mainly a regulator, so I don't have opinions on where the prices go up or down. But broadly speaking, because of what I call the short-term nature of the wars and other things, people do get panicked. They sell things, and then it happened during COVID times. In March 2020, things started kind of going bad for the markets. It went down by 40%. And then whoever bought today, even at today's numbers are like 5x, 10x increase, right? So during panic time, if you are able to sort of think through well, if you have cash available, why not?
there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. We have heard it from the MD and CEO of NSE. Definitely, I think that's a good call to take at this point if a stock is at rock bottom. Also, sir, people who are already there in the market is currently quite close to its yearly low. Is systematic accumulation a good choice for somebody who's already in the market? Now, I'm taking from a perspective of somebody who understands the stock market.
Again, over 30 years, if you look at Nifty, when it started in 1995, November 395 was the base at 1,000. Today, it's close to 25,000. And if you take the dividends which companies have given in that index, it could be close to 30,000. So 1,000 rupees, if you had invested around 30 years back, today it would be 30,000, right? So 30x times. If you stay systematic, every year if you put in little money, every month if you put in little money, in a country which is growing at 6.5%, 7%, broadly you get returns of around 10, 12%. So I was speaking at, say, European conference last year, and I was giving the price earnings ratio of India, which is like somewhere around about 20. And they couldn't believe, because they're getting like price earnings of 2, 3. And many European companies are actually raising funds from India. Many American companies are raising funds from India. We have seen Korean companies like LG and Samsung, LG and Hyundai, raising funds from India, taking away $2-3 billion each. And so India is in a unique position because it's growing. It has a demographics, it has a demand, and it has, of course, technology adoption. So that's where, for me, every month, if you keep on putting little money, probably in the long run, but don't get panicked, because the biggest issue with most of us is to think bad when situation starts looking topsy-turvy, and then we take out all the money. Right. That's where I think we make mistakes.
Don't panic. I think I'll definitely take that one back. Also, sir, India continues to be among the most promising long-term equity markets in the world, and we understand the market or the world at this point. There is too much volatility. India continues to be a bright spot in the midst of all of this. Do you feel, finally I want to get this understanding from you, is there opportunity coming out from this volatility in a market like India? Has India become that sweet spot?
Again, I have a theory that world will continue to become more volatile, because over a period, the imbalances happen across geopolitics, geoeconomics, in societies, in religions. And then when you can't solve the problems with arguments, you try to solve problems with wars. They don't solve anything, but you think sort of the other issues get a little hidden when you start doing some extraordinary stuff. But broadly speaking, the technology is the cause of all the changes that happens in the world. The rest of the things, all the imbalances happen is because of the way the technology evolves. And then people try to grab the positions, like today happening in AI or in oil and other things. And that's where India is in a unique position. The countries which adapt to technologies will grow faster. The countries which are young will have better demand. And countries which are large and young and technology-oriented will be actually growing fast. So that's where, for me, if you look at, say, China, Japan, it is already old. China became suddenly old because of one-child policy. You have India, which is young, technology-oriented, and having great demand. You have two young countries, both sides of India, but they want to go and live the life 1400 years back. They are not technology-oriented, right? Then you go to Africa, it's trying to stabilize itself, but if it comes up, it's going to be another powerhouse. You go to Europe, it has become old. If you go to America, in 2025, they had less number of physical people, humans, in 2025 compared to 2024. They are becoming old because that country is going to stagnate unless they import people. They've been importing people, now they've stopped. And so for me, this country is going to remain young. It's going to have demographics, which is young. It will have more demand because young people ask for more iPhones and more iPads and more clothes and newer clothes and good-looking clothes. Old people don't, right? And that's where you're going to have more demand, and they are technology-oriented. And every type of technology, whether it is drones or biotech or AI, the largest user base is in India, largest number of researchers are in India. I mean, we produce literally 15-20 million engineers every year. 15-20 million is not even a population of most countries, right? We are producing so many engineers every year. And so for me, this country's time has come. And it's in the right time because we are now at the central table of the technology.
this country's time has come. I think those words are going to resonate. Thank you so much, sir. That was Ashish Chauhan, MD and CEO, NSE. It was absolute pleasure speaking with you. You've given us a lot of takeaways, which we can take back to our regular trading days also, and also a message for all of us. This is WION Pulse, an absolute pleasure speaking with you, sir.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chauhan. I request you to stay with us on stage. I request the CEO, Zee Media Corporation Limited, Mr. Raktim Das, to please present to Mr. Chauhan a token of appreciation. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for this insightful conversation that we had and a great understanding of where India's stocks stand and how it will move forward. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for the insights that we got today. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Das, and thank you, Shivan, for this lovely conversation. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's move to our first panel discussion for the day. Diplomacy is today at the center of our lives, ladies and gentlemen, because in times of uncertainty, diplomacy becomes the most powerful tools that countries possess. Traditional alliances are being tested. New partnerships are emerging. Our first session, Finding Trust in an Age of Turbulence and Disruptive Diplomacy, explores how diplomacy is evolving and must move forward in this age of disruption.
There can be no peace in the world until the military power of Japan is destroyed.
80 years since the end of World War II. The global order is undergoing a profound and potentially irreversible transformation. As high-intensity geopolitical conflicts emerge worldwide, the rules are being rewritten. Old certainties are fading, and new power dynamics are emerging. In this uncertain landscape, traditional diplomacy gives way to unpredictable, leader-driven encounters.
You're right now not in a very good position.
In this new era, disruptive diplomacy risks fragmenting alliances and deepens uncertainty in global relations. The big question remains, does diplomacy still hold the key card? Countries like India champion a neutral, dialogue-driven approach, pushing for peace and stability amid fierce polarization. At the same time, one voice is growing stronger. The Global South. Emerging economies are demanding a bigger role in shaping global decisions. As diplomacy adapts to a rapidly transforming world, the challenge is clear. Can global powers and emerging voices find common ground? Can diplomacy pave the way for peace? This is not about noise. It's not about who wins or loses. Diplomacy is about the rhythm for securing a better future. Welcome to Power Pulse, where we present an in-depth conversation on building trust in a shifting global order. For the first panel, Power Pulse, please welcome our panelists. Antonio Bartoli, Ambassador of Italy to India. Since taking the role in 2024, he has focused on strengthening economic, technological and strategic cooperation between Italy and India. High Commissioner of Sri Lanka to India, Maheshini Kolon. During her career of over 25 years, she has served at Sri Lanka's permanent mission to the United Nations in New York and as Deputy High Commissioner in India. Simon Wong, High Commissioner of Singapore to India. He was Singapore's trade representative to Taiwan from July 2015 to January 2020. And prior to that, served as Deputy Secretary International from August 2012 to June 2015. Ambassador of Germany to India, Philipp Ackermann. He has also served as Director General for Africa, Latin America and West Asia at the Federal Foreign Office for 5 years.
Huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our panelists this morning. Extremely interesting conversation that my colleague Siddhant Sibbal will have with our esteemed guest. Siddhant?
Well, our world is changing very fast, almost on a daily basis. The conflict is impacting us, and it's impacting deep in terms of the war inflation, in terms of the West Asia war, whether it is the war in Europe. We have a big panel representing almost all parts of the world, at least the Eurasian part of the world, Europe, Asia, and we'll get a perspective about the situation. Let's start with the Sri Lankan High Commissioner, ma'am. My first question to you is, what's the view from Sri Lanka about the West Asia war? It looks like the war has reached the shores of Sri Lanka. We saw the warship Dana being sunken by the Americans. I know your foreign minister has already reacted to the developments, but if you can perhaps share your perspective about the situation on the ground.
So where the ship was concerned, it was sunk off the coast of Sri Lanka in international waters, and Sri Lanka did what it had to do according to the laws of the sea as well as laws of war, which we abide by. So when there was a distress call, the Navy and the Air Force were mobilized, and we rescued the survivors, and we managed to also salvage human remains, which have since been repatriated. So that's what we did. We did what we had to do, because although it sank in international waters, this was in Sri Lanka's search and rescue region. Where the war is concerned, what is actually far more concerning for us is what's happening in West Asia now and the Strait of Hormuz, and what the instability that is causing in terms of energy, in terms of the fuel prices going up, in terms of Sri Lankan workers in the region, and so on, and in the impact on the economy.
From South Asia, let's go to Europe, to the German ambassador. We have seen the comments of the German chancellor. He's clearly said that he's not going to join any initiative, perhaps led by the US president when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz. What's the view from Germany about this war? I know already Germany is facing the war, the repercussions of the war in Ukraine. How does the West Asia war impacts Germany, and what's your view about the situation in Strait of Hormuz?
So I think it's fair to say that it concerns us all, this war. It has, and Mohishini just said it, you know, it has an impact on all our countries, and it has a strong impact on Germany. I will give you two reasons. One is the rise of fuel prices. So every citizen of Germany now is confronted with the fact that fuel has become much more expensive. And we see also what we have experienced in the last couple of years, in the last 10, 12 years, that there is, you know, what happens in Lebanon. One part of this war, there is, of course, the danger that a new refugee movement will come up, which we are very, very concerned about. Germany is, for the first time in a long time now, gets a little growth. We are expecting a 1% growth this year. Even more maybe, but this war really prevents us from growing in the way we should grow. So I think it's fair to say that we are hugely concerned about this war. We hope it will end rather sooner than later, and we see with great concern that it has become sort of a regional, not maybe completely international, but a regional war that many countries somehow are suffering of, and between Lebanon and Kuwait and the UAE, Saudi, Iran. So it's a very, very dire and concerning situation, I would say.
From Europe, going back to Asia, to the Singapore High Commissioner, your country is sitting right at the crossroads of global trade. Have you seen a decrease or perhaps impact on the global trade? And also, as a country which is basically based on trade globally, how has the tariffs, Donald Trump's tariffs, perhaps impacted you?
I mean, since COVID, we had
one battle after another. We had Ukraine, we had the war now in Iran, we had Liberation Day, the day after April Fool's Day. Your conclave is called World Powers. For Singapore, a small trading nation, we prefer to see global scenarios that are normal, having a human level pause. But these days, we are being electrically shocked. Sometimes I feel we are in a geopolitical Squid Game. If you watch the Korean movie, Squid Game, we see many new challenges waking up in a day that we are not in control of. To answer your question, yes, we are seeing price shocks right now because of the situation in the Middle East. Petroleum prices have gone up, gas prices have gone up. We are trying to mitigate some of this. Like what my colleagues have said, we hope that the war will go off-ramp very soon. If not, we will get not only price shocks, we will get supply shocks.
Price shocks and supply shocks. Going back to Europe, to the Italian ambassador, do you see the IMEC, the India, Middle East, Europe corridor essentially being dead? Because it was already suffering because of the conflict, the war in Gaza. It was announced here in Delhi, but it looks like not much activity has taken place.
Yeah, it may sound as a paradox, but I think it's even more necessary to have not a single corridor, but a network of options, and so diversify. I mean, we share the same interests, the Gulf and India, in stability, in freedom of navigation, in trade. Italy is the fourth global exporter, so it's naturally interested in stability, security, and freedom of navigation. And as it always been said, when there is trade, there are less cannons. And so, yes, we think that is necessary. Is a visionary project. That doesn't mean unrealistic. Yesterday, we held a meeting with our private sector. There were more than 300 companies, showing and highlighting the opportunities in sectors such as infrastructure, digital. We are posing the underwater cable between India and Italy, the high-speed highway, and energy. So the response is yes. And in general, about Hormuz, I think we didn't want this war. We are not participating. We will not. We would like to see a return to diplomatic effort. We did our fair share, hosting even 2 rounds in Rome of the nuclear negotiations. Then it went otherwise, but we are confident that a more reasonable approach can be recuperated. And as far as Hormuz is concerned, I mean, let me push the rewind button. 500 years before BCE, there was the Greek alliance defeated the Persian Empire. Xerxes, Themistocles defeated Xerxes in Salamis, in the Battle of Salamis. We don't want a reverse Salamis battle, so there are no conditions to do that now. There is the readiness of Europe to enhance the Aspides mission to make sure that the other passages, like the Red Sea, can be preserved as alternatives.
Going back to Sri Lanka, High Commissioner, ma'am, your country has faced the direct challenges emerging out of conflicts, COVID, we saw the protests, something that was covered globally, not just here in India. What's the situation now in Sri Lanka? Has there been a stabilization? And also, do you fear that because of the conflict, the war in West Asia, the gains that your leadership has made, perhaps there is a concern that those gains can be reversed?
So, as everyone knows, Sri Lanka is a developing island nation in the Indian Ocean. So the ocean, shipping lanes, ports, airports, those are our lifelines. So when they're being affected and disrupted, naturally we have concerns. You mentioned a series of crises that Sri Lanka has faced. There was the economic crisis in 2022, as you mentioned, and then there was also the cyclone Ditwa that we faced in November last year. But despite all that, our economy was stabilizing. We had actually surpassed some of our customs and revenue targets. We had done very well in our fiscal management policies, and the new government was elected on a platform of transparency, accountability, and good governance. And people had certain expectations from them, and those expectations were being met despite Cyclone Ditwa. But people are also anxious because of the series of crises that they have faced. So the government at the moment is working with Sri Lanka's partners, the international partners, and we had actually started putting in place the frameworks and for sustainable development and so on. So we are managing okay at the moment. The structures that we had started to put in place for resilience systems and so on are helping us, definitely. But since we were struck by Cyclone Ditwa and now this, which is an external shock which we have no control over, there are concerns. So the government has this additional task of allaying the fears of people, because we have already introduced fuel rationing, and we have introduced a 4-day work week, and we have urged the private sector to also consider adhering to a 4-day work week. So we've had to put in place systems like this, and we have to also plan for unforeseen circumstances, because we don't quite know how this situation will evolve. So there are these concerns, but the government is taking steps. The government is aware. The government, even last night, the president addressed the nation and addressed questions from the public as well. So they're putting in place various steps, and we hope that this war, again, as everyone on the panel expressed, would not last long, because I don't know how we would be able to sustain in the future, because everyone is being affected, including India, which has always been our closest partner and our first responder, and the country that has stood by us in times of crisis.
To the German ambassador, Dr. Philipp Ackermann, do you think that Germany will have to do more heavy lifting now at a time when it looks like the United States is essentially withdrawing from the world? And do you think that Germany and India, the relationship, can play an important role in preserving that stability across the world?
So first of all, I think what is of utmost importance to us in Germany is that Europe stands united in this very difficult situation. Germany alone, we are a country of the size of Tamil Nadu, that's what I'm saying normally. So I don't see us really heavy lifting alone, but we are in the privileged situation to be geographically and institutionally in a framework, in a network that allows us to do heavy lifting. And the European Union, with its 450 million inhabitants, is for us a wonderful vehicle to make our voice heard. And you've seen what European Union said, and many countries said concerning the request of President Trump. We have said very clearly that's not our war, and we will not participate in this war. And it is also a voice of unity in a way. You should not forget that we in Europe have a war in front of our door, and this is also something that concerns us a lot. We have a war of aggression by Russia in Ukraine, where every day hundreds of soldiers and civilians die, every day. And now, with the shift of attention towards other war, we tend to forget easily that there are crises in the world where public attention, diplomatic skills, and efforts to solve situations are urgently needed. I tend to believe that it is good not to overburden, the international community, but to concentrate on those areas where really things can and have to be solved. Germany and India, I think, is a positive story. And Germany and India and Europe is a positive story. We have seen the FTA, a huge step in the right direction. I think it's for us hugely important, and Germany and other European countries will benefit as much as India will benefit from this FTA. And it shows that free trade is still on the agenda. We are against artificial tariffs imposing. We feel that free trade leads us in a tailor-made way, in a way that is acceptable for both sides, leads us to more prosperity and more trade interaction. And therefore, I think India is a fabulous partner for Europe and Germany right now.
Singapore High Commissioner, Mr. Wong, you made an interesting point. You said that we are in a squid game. What's the end game of this squid game, if you can perhaps give your view? And also in terms of the India relationship, your assessment about the relationship, because it looks like the Singapore is India's best friend in Southeast Asia. Is it correct to characterize like that?
Well, to put it very selfishly, Singapore wants to be player 4, 5, 6, that we somehow survive this chaos. But to elaborate on some of the points that my fellow panelists and your question is, I think because of fragmentation and because of the challenges to free trade, rules of law, rules of engagement, countries around the world will coalesce into a coalition of willing, and they will want to preserve many of the global rules right now. I see two bright spots from a regional perspective and also from an inter-regional perspective. Like what my colleague Philip have said, I think the Europe-ASEAN FTA will be an important space to watch. And the next phase to watch is the Europe CPTPP coalition, which is the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. I think with Europe and ASEAN, 450 million and 650 million in ASEAN is going to become one important player in stabilizing trades, tariffs, rules, and so on and so forth. And with CPTPP 12 and Europe 25, you're looking at 50% of the global trade, well, more or less of that. And beyond BRICS, I think these two inter-regional players will play a role on its own, because it's no longer in the US orbit, so to speak, and not in the Chinese orbit, so to speak. So I think the future is very bright for these two organizations. And I think for watchers in this room, this is a space to watch. In the case of India, I think we are trusted partners of India. We have just signed a comprehensive strategic partnership last year. And I think being the largest investor of India of the tune of 160 billion US dollars, I think we have a role to play vis-a-vis our relationship with India. We are looking at key sectors which are very, very relevant to us right now. The production of green energy and the eventual export of green energy from India to our part of the world. And then we have this semiconductor and electronics space, which I think India will do very, very well. And we are well entrenched, and we want to participate in this space. Thank you.
To the Italian ambassador, how do you see India-Italy relationship going forward at this time when the world is literally falling apart? Because we have seen positive developments in the relationship. But in terms of the challenges globally, how can this relationship form that important relationship that others can see and say that we would like to have this kind of relationship between two countries, India and Italy?
Let me say more in general with Europe. I think I agree that the partnership that we have just nailed down touches the main points: trade, security, that is a precondition, mobility, that is the exchanges not only of goods and data but also of human beings, and research and technology, that is the future. So I think that with the common thread that I think Europe can offer, that is stability and reliability and predictability, that is more and more rare in today's world. You know, we live in a world where we assist to a deterioration of the international order, with more and more unilateral initiatives. Frankly, the most blatant one was the aggression of Russia towards Ukraine. Russia, I remember, that is a member of the Security Council, the very body that should prevent this and be guarantor of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And this is this triggers this chain, and we are Europe and Asia. We are paying the price. For example, this war in Iran that we didn't initiate, and I think is an important wake-up call also for Europe, because as everybody knows, we relied on three factors that are no more there: the security umbrella of the United States, the trade relationship, and raw materials from China, and the cheap energy from Russia. None of these factors is no more there, and so we have to accelerate for strategic autonomy of Europe, because if somebody else takes care of your security on whatever else, it's never for free. In these, Italy is of course one of the founders of Europe and wants to be protagonist in that. And I think that the relationship with India is a strategic relationship to build more and more resilient value chains based on, and this is not rhetoric, based on values. I mean, it's not marginal that we are democracies, and so especially after COVID, we are more and more talking about friendly shoring, and so this is at the heart of our strategy. And I think that the relationship with India in all these areas, and specifically maritime security, IMEC, you know, with the boost of FTA, we have calculated that the value added of IMEC itself would be over 170 billion euro, and so we want to be part of this.
My final closing question, and this is a generic question to all of you. The question is basically, at a time when trust globally is a rare commodity, when essentially the world is falling apart almost on a daily basis, we see crisis, especially on social media, by the US president, who of course, when we wake up here in Asia, we have a new crisis to deal with. How each of your country is dealing with the upcoming crisis? Is there any strategy, or is it something that you're dealing on a minute-to-minute basis, or perhaps on minute-to-minute truth social basis? So starting with you, Your Excellency, and then we'll go.
Well, where you asked about trust, right? So for countries like Sri Lanka, the rules-based order is very important. And when the rules-based order is challenged, then obviously we have to find our way. We have to be pragmatic. We don't have the luxury of excluding countries. All our partnerships are equally important to us. And so you mentioned about minute to minute. We just don't know what the next moment holds. So we work very closely with all our partners, including India, especially India. And yes, we do have to keep strategizing from moment to moment. Yeah.
German ambassador.
If you want to be up to date, you just better subscribe to Siddhan Sibal's news by Vion. You know, this is something which is even quicker than Truth Social, I guess. Yes, on a serious note, yes, of course, we need to be, following everything that happens instantaneously, very, very carefully and thoroughly. I think we're getting used to that. We're getting used to the speed. It is maybe we have become quicker and we have become more active in our reaction. Is it a strategy? It's more a skill, I would say. It's a more skill to cope with all that is on the market, on all the networks. But I think generally speaking, we live in a very unruly time, and the end is not, the outcome, the off-ramp is not very clear. So we have to prepare for even worse crises, I'm sorry to say. And therefore, our strategy is build up trustworthy and reliable partnerships. And we in Europe, we have over the last almost 80 years, we have built a very trustworthy and reliable partnership with the 27 members of the EU. And I think we know how to build these partnerships, and that's where I'm very optimistic or positive, is that we can build these partnerships also with partners outside the EU, and India is one of them. But I think, Simon, you are completely right. The ASEAN CPTPP region is also one of them, and I think that's where we have to invest in, and that's where we have to make our efforts.
High Commissioner, sir.
Singapore is too small. We are a price taker. So we have to be sometimes very zen about all these pulsating challenges of the day. But as what my colleague, Dr. Ackerman, has said, we just need to build our own resilience. We need to be self-sufficient in terms of critical minerals and critical resources. And then we build partnership with like-minded countries. I think we are hopeful that perhaps after November there will be some change of mind in the larger scheme of things. There will be some kind of a pause, but as usual, the rhythms of the 3 a.m. tweets are sometimes very hard pulsating, but we are practitioners of many faiths. I myself is a practicing Buddhist. I take things in our stride, and I think we are very resilient countries all around, including India. We will get past this. Thank you.
So, closing remark?
I think we have to do exactly the opposite of the social media philosophy. I mean, not indulge in easy emotions, in slogans, in superficial assessments, and then change continuously, but aim at the main ingredients that we have all mentioned: trust, reliable and resilient value chains, and relationship with friendly countries, and restore some of the international rules-based order, but not as a ideal, unattainable, but as a concrete reality that we all have to contribute to build, starting from European Union. And I think that Europe, as I said, can be a very reliable and strong partner with which countries like India can deepen and develop a relationship. But this implies more effort, more direct relationship between bureaucracies, departments. I mean, we have to develop this dialogue living up to the ambition of the FTA and the strategic agenda. This is a serious strategy, not superficial emotions of tweets.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, High Commissioners and Ambassadors, for speaking to Vion and giving us your perspective about how the situation is evolving and how your countries are dealing with it. Thank you so much, sir and ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Just a quick question to the Italian ambassador. Sir, you said social media tweets shouldn't be the way forward, but isn't it better that we have all the information through all of these social media posts in that emotional outrage, and then we can plan accordingly?
I'm not, you know, there was this Luddites movement that destroyed machinery during the Industrial Revolution. I'm not some of those. I'm not appealing against. I'm saying that social media shouldn't orientate and shape the public discourse. Of course, it's a valuable source of information, but we shouldn't. Now we are called, the leaders are called leaders and are not followers. So should shape the public discourse without being trained by that.
Well, that's the irony of our times. Social media is used to influence views and opinions, and it is now being used for international guidelines and, you know, diplomacy as well. But thank you very much to all of you for joining us and having this candid conversation. I request Managing Editor Vion, Mr. Rabin Sharma, to please come up on stage and present our panelists, our guests, with a token of appreciation. Can we have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? It's been a pleasure having them here among us and understanding their perspective of what has been happening all around us, the geopolitics of our times, the geoeconomics of our times, and what way the world now might move ahead. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. They've been honest, they've been candid, they have been kind to answer all our questions and give us a perspective of what each country thinks. Thank you so much.
कोटक नियो के तेज ट्रेडर, देखिए इनका गजब हौसला।
निकी इंडेक्स डिप्स एंड स्नैप्स बैक। मार्केट खुलते ही भयंकर तेजी से गिरने के संकेत, पूरी ताकत से शॉर्ट कीजिए। Today's dip may be a rare buying opportunity. Gold ETF खरीदिए, ये सुनहरा मौका छोड़ना नहीं है। This stock is on radar. It's a record-breaking rally. अभी भी वक्त है, बेचो। ये ट्रिगर गिरावट का है, स्टॉक में उछाल है। कसम कैंडलस्टिक्स की, बेचो और बचो।
ये करते हैं शोर को इग्नोर, और ये हौसला जानबाजी से नहीं, जानकारी और तैयारी से मिलता है। Stay तेज with कोटक नियो। हौसला है तो हो जाएगा। Investments in securities markets are subject to market risks. Read all related documents carefully before investing.
And well, let's move on to our next session now, ladies and gentlemen. If diplomacy defines relationships between nations, trade defines their prosperity. For decades, globalization drove economic growth across continents, but today, the global trading architecture is facing new pressures. Supply chains are being redrawn. Economic security is becoming a priority. Our next session, Reimagining Global Commerce, Tariff, Trade and Trust, focuses on the geoeconomics of our times.
Global commerce is being redefined, not just by markets, but by strategy. Supply and demand are overpowered by tariffs. It isn't just about revenue anymore. The world is grappling with an aggressive push towards leverage, security, and shaping the future of global trade. From electric vehicles and semiconductors to critical minerals and agriculture, the era of simple supply chains is giving way to who the cheapest and most secure supplier is. Resilience is now as important as efficiency. At a time of economic disruption, trust is the currency of global commerce. Has the world already set its new trade framework? Or will a new geo-economic order cement a fresh foundation? The question is no longer how fast we can trade, but how wisely we can seal the deal. Can the world reimagine balanced trade, or will the barter between transaction and values draw the contours of future diplomacy? Welcome to WION World Pulse, where we reimagine global commerce, tariff, trade, and trust. To discuss Economy Pulse session, reimagining global commerce, tariff, trade, and trust, we call upon the stage. Please welcome Sanjeev Sanyal, a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, India. Sanyal was also the principal economic advisor to the Finance Minister for 5 years till February 2022. Our next panelist is Rajiv Kumar. Rajiv Kumar is a former vice chairman of Niti Aayog. His career has spanned academics to government, to corporate chambers and multilateral institutions. Up next, we welcome Salih S. Nair, Managing Director and CEO of Tamil Nadu Mercantile Bank. Nair has an experience of over 35 years in the banking and financial services industry and has served as Deputy Managing Director and Chief Credit Officer at State Bank of India.
Welcome, Mr. Sanyal and Mr. Kumar. We'll have Mr. Nair joining us virtually in a short while from now. A lot of conversation around geoeconomics, the kind of world that we are living in, the kind of challenges that we are grappling with. And just before this session, we had a lot of conversation about trusted partnerships. I want to start with you, Mr. Sanyal. Do we trust each other?
Well, the global system that was built on a sort of a certain architecture since the early 90s, that has clearly come undone. There is no doubt about it. And so the global supply chains that were built on the idea of just-in-time efficiency now are being reconfigured for just-in-case. And that revival of interest in the idea of resilience means that we have to think about something, by the way, which we have been saying in India for quite some time, that one, if you can be Atmanirbhar in something, at least in critical things, try to get it wherever practical, be Atmanirbhar. Now, at least for a large country, it's possible. It may not be possible for, say, a Singapore to be Atmanirbhar, but at least a country our size, in as many things as possible, try and do that. In those things, we cannot be Atmanirbhar. We need to have a multi-line view of multiple sources of partners. This is quite different from how we used to think about the world, say, till as recently as 2019, before the COVID crisis. I think the first round of this new kind of thinking really came with COVID. It's now very obvious that we need to have that. And we are seeing it play out right now as far as energy sources are concerned. Whether the diversified sources that we have, which include Russia in the basket, it came to some criticism for quite some time from, say, Western powers. But I think they themselves accept that it's a sensible thing to do. Even within the Gulf network, we have seen in the last few weeks, India's diplomacy has been able to extract our own ships. So this particular just-in-case kind of attitude that we have had towards supply chains is playing out well for us, I would say. That doesn't mean that this current crisis will not have a price for our economy. But given the circumstances, I think we are doing okay.
Mr. Kumar, Mr. Sanyal talked about the COVID time, and that is a time when we all realize that supply chains need to be reworked and we can't be dependent on one particular nation on certain critical things that we all need. And then you have this time where, trade has been weaponized, the Strait of Hormuz is being used as a weapon in war. In terms of what India has been able to do, like Mr. Sanyal said, there has been a lot of criticism about how India perhaps domestically hasn't been able to achieve what it set itself to target with. Therefore, it's been sort of, it's not really going all out in terms of answering those very countries that are doing the push and pull. What would you say to them then? Have we been able to achieve our domestic targets?
Yeah, hi, and good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be here. Just to answer your first question first, which is that we've never trusted each other. This is a mercantilist world, and trade is not about trust. Trade is about getting benefit from each other, and which is why you had organizations like the WTO, which said that look, let's define some rules by which we can work together. So that's the East India Company downwards. Trust is not in the lexicon of world trade. So let's forget that. And let's not dwell on that further. So on the other one, about domestic targets, I'm not sure which one do you mean, because there's so many of them. And the fact is that, domestic targets, but let's confine ourselves to the trade target, because that's what is important. And I think we have set ourselves the target of, that we will be one day a current account surplus economy. We have not been that. And, and I'm not sure that we will be that. And the other one, for example, that we will, but that's not important as far as I'm concerned. But what is important is that we should now work towards improving our achievement of energy security. And that's possible. Because that's what 85% of fossil fuel being imported and our dependence on that has now shown up already. We don't need to have that dependence, because now with the renewables and with electric vehicles, etc., plus hydrogen. Now, and actually that's the one that we need to be working on now. So actually it's not the issue of whether we have not been able to do so, of course not, but whether we should be doing that now. And my own thinking is that this is the time where we should give serious policy attention, not to just the generation of energy, which is, as I said, hydrogen, but also the transmission, the storage, plus the distribution. And I think this is the time to undertake very necessary energy reforms in our country as we are, as every day passes. And that's the one to do it.
Mr. Sanyal, Mr. Kumar talked about Western hegemony and the East India Company downwards. Most of the organizations, they've been working on that very concept. And you've been somebody who's been very vocal about how this part of the world is now seeing growth and it should be, talked about more. How do you then see this transition that we are seeing? There was geopolitics, now you've got geoeconomics. India is maneuvering her way through that diplomatic tightrope, through the economic tightrope. But is this now a complete bend towards this part of the world, or this is still a transitionary phase which can go any which way?
The world is always in transition, and history never ends. So the question is how well you navigate it. I think just the last few years should have proved that. I mean, who predicted that there was going to be a war just a few months ago? But, go back to COVID or the Russia-Ukraine war or any number of other things. Meanwhile, there are also major technological shifts happening, not just artificial intelligence and genetics, but in multiple areas, all of which will have unintended consequences. So the purpose of good policy making is not so much the ability to predict how the world will be in 20 years' time, but be able to invest in things that give you optionality. So let me give you one example, and then you will understand what I mean. So when you look at India, we have this mental image of India largely as a continental power till very recently. But think about it. We have one long border with Pakistan, with whom we don't trade. We have another long border with China, with whom we do trade, but not with the bits that we have borders with. Tibet is not the economic engine of China. So if you think about it from a geo-economic and mercantile perspective, India is actually an island nation. But 90% plus of our goods trade is carried by foreign vessels. Now think about this. This is actually in some ways our single biggest vulnerability. Now, the good news is that we have recognized it in recent years and began to do something about it. One is, of course, we have begun to invest in our Navy, but very importantly, we have finally begun to invest into our merchant Navy. So very big programs have been put in place, for example, for shipbuilding, 70,000 crores package for shipbuilding that was put through about 18 months ago. We've changed all our rules on flagging and ownership. We have given ships, not just shipbuilding, but ships infrastructure status. And as a result of which, our shipbuilding yards that were languishing just 24 months ago, they now have 4, 5, 6 years worth of solid orders. Why am I making this point? I'm making this point that this kind of resilience cannot be built overnight. We need to create a whole ecosystem, create a fleet of ships, containers, by the way, and to show you how, meanwhile, China had thought about this a couple of decades ago, is that China actually, 20, 25 years ago, had almost no shipbuilding capability. Today, China builds 55 to 60% of all ships under construction right now. So this is something that we have to therefore think in strategic optionality ways. Am I, rather than waste my time trying to figure out where the Baltic Dry is going to be in 20 years' time, which I have no idea, I build optionality, be able to have some kind of decent fleet, some kind of capability, and be willing to make resources available for those areas, change rules where necessary, drastic changes where necessary, in order to be able to do it.
So you're saying that, continue to take the steps, but don't expect immediate changes. It takes time to bring about drastic changes.
Yes, but we have been now doing it for some time. So there are areas where we have some capacity. So in a world where certain kinds of industries have basically been entirely wiped out by China, India is one of the very few countries that still has some capacities in many of those areas. For example, making solar panels. It is true that Indian solar panels are not in the same scale as, say, the Chinese industry, but we actually do have a solar panel industry. We do have some capabilities in chemicals, in engineering, and other things, which have got effectively wiped out in many other parts of the world. Now, this has required certain amount of effort, PLI schemes and so on.
Yeah.
It hasn't worked in every case. But it is also the case that we have built certain industries that didn't exist before. For example, electronics. So not everything is going to go our way, but it requires certain level of persistence, certain practical adjustments that we need to make, and do realize that this is a long game.
Okay, let me also bring in Mr. Nair into this conversation. Mr. Nair, this entire banking system has been emphasized upon. Let's have him on screen. How central do you think is the banking system to sustaining this kind of a momentum, the kind of momentum that we have seen in India growing as one of the major economies of the world?
See, somebody has to finance the growth. And who can finance the growth? In this country, it is the banking system that will eventually have to rise up and finance the growth. Right? If you look at, if you step back and look at the history, I think typically the banking sector grows as per the nominal GDP growth. And if you are, the country has its own ambition of becoming a Vikasit Bharat by 2047. I think we are looking at something like a $30 trillion economy, an $18,000 to $20,000 per capita, and somebody has to take the bill. If the government cannot entirely do that, I think there's going to be a lot of investments happening in the infrastructure. Government, driving the infrastructure lending. There's a lot of activity that will happen in the manufacturing sector. By 2047, we are looking at the current the share of manufacturing sector in the GDP growth at 16%. We are looking at ramping it up to 25%. That's the ambition of the government. That is the ambition of the country. Somebody has to finance it, right? And that's where the banking system steps in. And that's where I think we are going to see a lot of activity happening.
And so do you think, Mr. Nair, that the banking system, the Indian banking system has become stronger in the last decade? What has fundamentally changed?
Absolutely. I think today's the banking sector is certainly much stronger than what it was 10 years ago. Just take a step back and look at where we were 10 years back. After the asset quality review of December 2015, and the kind of NPAs that mounted subsequently, I think the banking sector was faced with 11% NPA. I think for the first time, the largest bank in the country reported a loss because of the provision that it had to make. So 11% from 11% NPA to bring it down to a 2% kind of number that the industry is today sitting on is a complete, I would say, a sea change that we have seen. And today, the banking sector is much more, from a balance sheet perspective, very strong. The NPA numbers are low, well capitalized, and it is all poised for growth.
Okay. Mr. Kumar, what has worked for us domestically and the kind of policies that we have shaped through these years, what has worked for India as far as its growth is concerned? Because despite global headwinds, we have been able to sustain ourselves.
What's worked for India is the amazing commitment of the political leadership to growth, infrastructure, innovation, skills, education, and health. I mean, essentially what's happened since 2014 is that we have a political leadership which is, without any other sort of distraction, committed to India's growth and, infrastructure development. And they identified very early on the bottlenecks or the constraints which were holding India back and focused on that. And I mentioned all of them sort of in one breath. So that's the one biggest thing that's worked for India. And let's not underestimate that. That's one part of it. The second part of it is that I think what's happened is that in India, the rubber meets the road in the states. It's the states which matter. The center can do that much. And in the last 11 years, 12 years or so, or even longer actually, the states have gotten into the game. And they have actually begun to recognize that what they have to do to get their states ahead, as it were. And some of the things that we did in Niti Aayog about ranking the states across a lot of matrices helped a lot, because that what is told them kind of publicly brought out the fact as to where you were in certain in rankings across various things. So, and I think that's the key, because let us be convinced. Let us convince ourselves that India will grow when the states grow, and what happens in Manipur will be very different from what happens in Maharashtra. So therefore, the more decentralized we can get, the more federal we can get, and this is what's happened actually, in the last 11 years. I think that's what's produced results. So two things: one, an unwavering commitment to removing the bottlenecks to growth by the political leadership at the center, and two, the states getting into the act and in a way competing with each other to attract private investment and to attract investment. I think those are the two things in a nutshell which have worked for us.
Mr. Sanyal, you want to come in on this, clearing the roadblocks as far as our growth is concerned, the kind of policies that we make?
Absolutely. And in fact, if you go back over the last 10 years, let's go back 10 years back. What would have been the things that you said were the roadblocks? First, you would have said, oh, the infrastructure is just not good enough. While intra-city infrastructure is still a major, major issue, and we can debate that, but I think intercity infrastructure and the infrastructure that you use for exports, imports, and things like that, those have dramatically improved. Our highways are dramatically better, our airports are dramatically better, our ports are dramatically better. So I don't think from the pure production perspective, infrastructure is no longer the binding constraint. I'm not saying you can't improve it, I'm just saying it's not a binding constraint. Similarly, we didn't have an internal market. So GST, through 2 iterations, has now created an internal market. Third, we had a banking system, and we heard Mr. Nair earlier also talked about this, that our banking system was basically bust. We had the twin balance sheet problem, and we carried out this major cleanup, which I was a participant in that process. And we have come to a place where our banking system is one of the cleaner ones and more robust ones in the world. Now, those are not trivial achievements. All the 3 major bottlenecks have been done, and this has been done while maintaining macroeconomic stability. We used to be an high inflation country, not in the Argentina sense of high inflation, but something in the range of 8 to 12% inflation. Now we have settled comfortably in the 2 to 6% range. This is not a trivial thing. This is a 600 basis point reduction in underlying inflation. Again, all of this means that our underlying foundations are radically better than they used to be. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't need to do other things. We need to, next round of reforms need to be done. There are many areas I've talked about, whether cleaning up the legal system and enforcement of contracts is one of them. But one major issue which I think we need to get serious about is intracity infrastructure, municipal infrastructure. So this is an area where, well, it affects all of us. But if you go back 30, 40 years, we used to think our cities were dysfunctional because we were poor. Now we are still poor, but not as poor as we were 30 years ago. But our cities are still dysfunctional. In fact, in some cases become worse because the air quality, for example, in Delhi is worse than it was 30 years ago. So I think we need to have a serious conversation with ourselves, and this requires, Mr. Kumar was, Dr. Kumar was just talking about different layers of government. It's not just about the central versus state, but we also have to go down all the way to the municipal level, where in fact a lot of the dysfunction now is.
So while we are talking about what we can do domestically, I also want to shift our focus to the wider geo-economics at play at the moment. Do you see this as a precedent, Mr. Sanyal, going forward? After 4 years, after the November midterms, do you see this now as a precedent where trade and tariffs will be used against countries?
First of all, this is not entirely new. It is true that we did have a Goldilocks-ish period in maybe the 2000s, early 2000s. But the fact that the world is generally disrupted for some reason or the other is not an unusual situation. If you go back the last, every decade, you'll find something in the world has broken down. I mean, as I said, 5 years ago, it was COVID had broken down. If you go a decade before that, you would say, oh my God, we had the global financial crisis. If you go a decade before that, we had the Asian crisis and the dot-com bubble blow up.
In fact, I don't think after COVID, the world has really stabilized. We've just
No, what I'm
seen
trying to tell you is that
it
may feel, it is indeed particularly disrupted right now, but this idea that the world this is an unusual time is also wrong. The world is almost always disrupted to a greater or lesser extent. So the idea that resilience is an important part of how we think about the world needs to be internalized by us for all time, irrespective of whether or not a new equilibrium appears or not. Even that will only last for a short period.
So you're saying we're just too vocal and aggressive about it now?
I just wanted to come in here because, I hope Sanjeev will agree, which is that, this is a very different time in the world. And actually in the book that we've just published called Everything All at Once, what we bring out is that there are 6 simultaneous global transitions going on at this time in the world. Geoeconomic, geopolitical, AI, climate, the rise of Asia, the global south, etc., etc. So what that means is, what that implies, as we've said, is that business as usual will not do. We've got to put our thinking caps on in our country and start thinking very differently, about how do we handle anything. And one, and a small example of that would be, for example, the impact of AI on our productivity and on our jobs and our employment. So, I can go on. But, such a conjunction of transitions at the same time, which is happening. For example, the decline of Pax Americana. We hadn't seen it for the last 75 years. One of the things that we have come out there with in our book is that it's time, therefore, for countries like India and China and maybe the BRICS and together to work together to create a new world economic order which rejects the post-Second World War order that had been created, because that's just become dysfunctional and, if I may say, useless. That's what you need to do.
What is the new world order, sir?
I don't know.
We keep using this phrase. What is
I
it?
don't know, but what the new world order, for example, would be one which, Indo-Pacific will become far more important than transatlantic. And that's clear. Indo-Pacific, including Africa, would be the rising powers, would be contributing more to global growth, etc. So therefore, they should have a greater role, greater play. Now, this is what we need to think through. And this is why we need to change, whatever we have done in the past, is saying that simply won't do. Now, the new world order will be shaped by, as I said, countries like India and China and other members of the BRICS. Can we play a role in that? We are going to be the chairman of the BRICS, in this year. I think this is a time for us to think differently, both to handle the short-term immediate issues, but also to think longer term, because the world is changing and very rapidly, and as I said, almost many things at the same time.
Aside from this, Mr. Sanyal, we were talking about political leadership, and there has been so much that is being said since this entire tariff war started, the tariff pressure started. There is a lot that is said on social media. Since you're privy to the conversations, the Prime Minister's office, do they influence at all the decisions, the conversations that happen around trade or geoeconomics? Or it's just the kind of aggression and narratives that we see online? Do they translate into decision-making at all?
Of course they do. In the end, advisors like myself or the civil service, etc., they can come up with trade-offs. Remember, there's no ideal set of policies. They are basically various trade-offs you're making. And there is no way you can see how the future will be. And Dr. Kumar also says he also doesn't know. So here the point is, what are the trade-offs you made? Are they resilient and robust enough to random shocks? How much flexibility you have kept there? And so on. So this is, in that environment, ultimately it is the political leadership that takes these calls. And when things go wrong, they are the people who take the hit as well. So you cannot think of the world as some sort of a technocratic problem that needs to be solved. Ultimately, the political leadership is the one that has to take the responsibility. And so their opinions have to matter. Ultimately, it is they who take the decision.
And so before I wrap up, I want to ask both of you how you see this moving forward. India's growth in the kind of instability that we are grappling with. There is West Asia that is completely unstable once again. There is the Russia-Ukraine war. There is, multiple tariff pressures that we are trying to make our way through. We've got multiple FTAs with several countries, and good ones, the mother of all deals at that with the EU. But as far as our way forward is concerned, Mr. Sanyal, how do you see it?
So I think, as is clear, that we are in an environment where the visibility is particularly murky. It's always murky, it is particularly murky. So in this environment, obviously, having optionality and flexibility is very, very critical, whether it's in terms of our internal policies, which will get disrupted in various ways by technology and so on, in our external alignments, and you can see that happening, whether it's in our diplomacy or in the variety of free trade agreements we have signed or in the process of doing, the kinds of industries we are trying to get to do. And remember, we are a very big country, so we can't get away with one or two engines firing. We need several engines firing simultaneously to keep us going. And at the same time, we are also vulnerable to several things going wrong. So in this environment, we have to be willing to take the tough decisions and invest into things which provide those optionalities. I had earlier given you the example of ships, shipbuilding, and the maritime sector, just as an example. But this is true of artificial intelligence and various kinds of LLMs and what we do with information. It is true of chemicals, critical chemicals, and our health sector. It is true for pretty much everything.
Okay, Dr. Kumar?
Yeah, as I said, and I'm just going to give you, we have to do things differently.
Yeah.
One of the things that we have to do, for example, is that this state, this government should turn itself from a regulatory government to a promotional government. India's glory, India's work had always been done by the private sector. And what you would like, therefore, is that this government should become a supporter of the private sector in all forms and reduce the regulatory and compliance burden which the Prime Minister has talked about, saying that there are 62,000 of them, etc. Yeah. So that's the first one. The second one, as I had mentioned, and then Sanjeev, further elaborated that, we've got to decentralize. In the Pehle India Foundation, which I chair now, we are actually doing work at the district level. Because district is a very good unit, there's 3 million people, and there are 60 countries which are smaller than 3 million. So our district is a very good unit where you can work to bring what? To bring about governance transformation so that the 4 stakeholders, which is the business, the government, the academia, and the civil society, can come on the same platform and work on a basis of trust. You talked about trust. Yes. That's where trust is needed, so that we can all pull in the same direction. The third thing that I must emphasize is that India, and Jaishankar has said this, the best foreign policy for India is to focus on domestic growth. And for that, I was going to say, FTAs are not the answer. Probably good. By the way, the past history of our FTAs is that we haven't benefited from them. Let's hope that we will. The answer lies in raising the productivity of our workers, the enterprise, the entrepreneurial talent of our entrepreneurs, and to bring about innovation and bring about greater R&D. And finally, we have to recognize that we will be the only country in the world history which will have to grow and as well as take care of our environment at the same time. It cannot be sequenced. And we don't seem to recognize that as much as we should do, but I think it's a must. It's an existential issue for us. Those 4 things should be enough for any policy agenda for a while.
All right, on that sense of optimism, I'm going to wrap this conversation up. Thank you so much to both of you gentlemen for these lovely insights. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Sanyal and Dr. Kumar. I now request CEO Zee Media Corporation Limited, Mr. Raktim Das, to please present our token of appreciation and gratitude to Mr. Sanyal and Dr. Kumar. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, please. They've been honest. They have really given us a good perspective on where things stand and where things can move for India ahead. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was quite an insightful conversation that we had, a good understanding of what lies for the Indian economy and what can be done up ahead. And now we shift our focus to our next session, It is on defense and deterrence, future warfare, and strategic imperatives. Remember, this is an important conversation because even though security has always shaped the course of history, its nature is now changing. Battlefields are now in cyberspace and artificial intelligence systems, as well as much they are on ground as they are being fought online. Remember, let's take a look at some of the messages that we have and, of course, more about the session.
Distinguished guests, policymakers, military leaders, strategists, diplomats, and industry partners, ladies and gentlemen, my greetings to all of you. I congratulate Vion on convening the inaugural Vion Pulse Global Summit, and I thank the team for creating a forum that brings together leaders and practitioners across domains. Your themes across power, economy, defense, technology, planet, healthcare, and mobility reflect the reality of our times. In an interconnected world, turbulence is one sphere, which can quickly translate into pressure across the security landscape. This is why the Defense Pulse session on defense and deterrence is timely. Defense and deterrence remain the cornerstones that enable sovereign nations to protect their people, secure their interests, and preserve national decision space. A credible posture today requires a balanced mix of nuclear, conventional, and missile defense capabilities, complemented by space and cyber capabilities. Faced with the possibility of a kinetic attack, a state has two clear options: deter the adversary to avoid conflict, or prepare the defense and war. The responsibility of military leadership is to strengthen deterrence through credible readiness so that conflict is prevented. And if deterrence fails, the nation is prepared to respond on its own terms. Operation Sindoor reinforces a simple lesson that deterrence rests on three pillars: credibility, capability, and the will to act. When these align, deterrence becomes decisive. It also establishes clarity that hostile actions will invite a response that is measured, firm, and guided by national interests. Deterrence today is dynamic, evolving, and is continuously shaped by the changing character of war. Traditional doctrines are being rewritten every day as the battlefield is expanding gradually to include whole of nation. Alongside land, sea, and air, we now contend equally with cyberspace and the cognitive domain. What binds these domains together is multi-domain operations. Success depends on optimally harnessing evolving technology and integrating its effects across all domains while addressing conventional threats and irregular challenges in parallel. Gray zone methods and hybrid strategies increasingly accompany conventional force. At the same time, we must be clear about the truth that geography imposes on us. Some nations can attempt to fight from a standoff distance, but India may not have that advantage. Our security challenges sit across contiguous borders where territorial realities matter. In such disputes, land remains the only true currency of victory. Precision strikes and standoff capabilities are essential, but they cannot be substitutes for holding or capturing ground, imposing control and sustaining resolve. Future readiness can draw its inspirations from the clarion call given by the Honorable Prime Minister as JED: jointness, Atmanirbharta, and innovation. Jointness is all about synergy in the 6 domains, interagency cooperation, and a whole-of-nation approach. Everyone be aligned to the common intent. This is no longer an option, it is an imperative. Atmanirbharta and accelerated innovation will ensure that India always remains ahead of the curve in terms of defense and deterrence. Indian Army's transformation is also aligned with the national vision of Viksit Bharat 2047, with reforms, technology absorption, and capability development pursued with speed and purpose. I am confident that today's discussion will generate practical insights on future security architecture, emerging technologies, evolving hybrid threats, and their strategic imperatives that shape credible deterrence. I wish the Vion Pulse Global Summit every success and extend my best wishes to all speakers and participants for a meaningful and outcome-oriented session. Jai Hind.
The meaning of defense and deterrence is rapidly evolving. Traditional warfare doctrines have been rewritten as the battlefield expands. Warfare is now multi-domain, simultaneously spanning across land, maritime, air, cyber, and space. Convergence of AI, hypersonics, robotics, and autonomous systems are ushering in a revolution in military affairs. In a global AI market projected to exceed $1.5 trillion by 2030, technological asymmetry will be pivotal on the battlefield. Air power is shifting more towards uncrewed combat aircraft for ISR, for intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and strike missions, reducing human risks. With robots already performing flawless martial arts moves, are armored humanoids on the front lines still a distant reality? Tech modernization is non-negotiable to withstand evolving hybrid and gray zone threats. Defense is now all about readiness with consistently evolving strategic imperatives. Welcome to Defense Pulse for an in-depth conversation on the future of warfare. For our panel on defense and deterrence, our esteemed speakers are former Chief of the Air Staff of India, Air Marshal Rakesh Kumar Singh Bhadauria, a highly decorated pilot who served as India's 26th Chief of Air Staff. He served for over 40 years in the Indian Air Force. Dr. Prahlada Ramarao, the man behind India's famed Akash surface-to-air missile system. He has also helped shape India's missile defense capabilities, including the Astra and BrahMos. Ankit Mehta. Ankit Mehta is co-founder and CEO of IdeaForge Technology. Last year, IdeaForge's drones played a pivotal role in Operation Sindoor, providing critical intelligence to the Indian Army.
A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. May I also invite my colleague Shivan Channa to please take this conversation forward with our guests.
Thank you, Shreya. Absolute pleasure to finally be on this panel, and just to give a glimpse to all our viewers, to everybody here in attendance. We've been having this discussion already, so I think this will be a continuation of what we've already been discussing. Let us start very quickly, sir. Today's day and age, it's the Mediterranean Sea, the Red Sea, Black Sea, Caspian Sea, Arabian Sea. It's already seeing hostilities. South China Sea, it remains hostile, it remains volatile. Caribbean Sea has seen hostilities at least since September, and it doesn't seem to be abating anytime soon at this point. Economically, the world is feeling a strain for what is happening in West Asia. A large number of countries can very quickly get involved. At this point, there is a pertinent question which has been looming. Are we looking at a war which is not confined to just a few countries? And is warfare only now limited to what it was a few years ago, land, sea, and air? Or has it now expanded, as Army Chief also mentioned, to domains which are beyond land, sea, and air? It's cyber and it's space as well. So I wanted to understand, and Air Chief, sir, I'll start with you first. What are the domains of warfare today?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me here. I must thank Vion. I think the last time I was with Vion was during Op Sindoor, and I've always liked your low noise approach. Domains-wise, the nature is changing, technology has changed, and now, apart from classic, sea, land, and air, very important aspects that have come up are cyberspace and cognitive. I think Army Chief referred to it. So the multi-domain operation is the key today. Any operation, any conflict, including gray zone conflicts, there is always be multi-domains involved. And that is the key, I think, towards developing technologies, capabilities, and overall be able to integrate and conduct multi-domain operation. I think that is the key.
Dr. Ramarao, you mentioned something very, very critical to me, and I'd really request if you can bring this to the audience. Wars today, and I would say now let's give a little glimpse of what it's going to look like in times to come, and very soon. Times to come don't look like 50 years from now. That could be as soon as 5 years or 3 years from now. Where will wars be fought? And this is realistically speaking.
See, technologically, the way it's going, what we have seen, last war, current going on war, and next, what we see is, it is moved from ground to air. That is, from the tank warfare, it has now come to air warfare. So, if you look at the forecasting, it will be in this space. The next war will be in the space, whatever done, because satellites are going to be involved, and delaying, you have to, the deterrence will come from adversary satellite, or you would like your adversary satellite to become ineffective. So the game will be moving to from ground to air, now it's going to move to space. So the whole focus will be space. How do we make sure that our space is fully protected, and we are also able to deny the airspace, space for others in case of any war. So that will be the next game changer. We have to focus on our strength of in the satellite domain.
So before we go forward to Ankit, if you can elaborate further, when you say it will be in space, this is satellite to satellite warfare. Are we looking at militarized satellites? What are we, if you can elaborate, sir?
Already our Space Department and Defense together, they are working together. How do we create space war, space capabilities? That is, you have the, from one space asset, how do you deny the space asset for our adversary? This is what is going to be one. If you see that the asset of the adversary is ineffective, or delayed, denied, then we win the war. So it will be like that. And there are technologies being talked about how do we handle space to space, like a air-to-air interaction. It will happen. And probably it will emerge, as you see. There are many technologies going on from the space platform itself. We don't want to discuss all the details, but it will be, slowly, you will see how it is emerging.
Ankit, this is, I just want to bring to everybody's attention, this panel is diverse because Ankit also brings in the fact that the private sector has now been involved in India's security architecture. This is something which is new for India. It has not always been the case. Ankit, I wanted to understand from you, what kind of a boost or shot in the arm do you feel the private sector or young companies like yourself, IdeaForge, brings in to the armed forces? And just to add, IdeaForge drones were used by the Indian Army for surveillance purposes during Operation Sindoor. So what kind of a arc does that add to our security apparatus?
Thanks, Shivan. First of all, thank you for inviting me for this panel. I think Vion is a channel that you go to often to get not just local but a global perspective on news and areas that we care about deeply on the strategic side. In terms of the private sector contribution, I think since the time defense has opened up to the private sector, a lot of work has been happening over the years, but I would say a lot of that work was foundational in getting us where we are today. We've been around as IdeaForge for the last 20 years, and we have ensured that each and every subsystem that goes into our platforms is actually designed and developed in the country. Now what that does is it's going to usher in a future where we will not be dependent on critical intelligence or areas that need adaptation on field, because one of the realities of war is that the speed of adaptation on ground is changing rapidly. People are evolving their countermeasures and their countermeasures faster than it was ever possible before, because most of the war is becoming robotic and software defined, or the tactics are changing very, very fast. And therefore, having local capability of adapting to it, of the private industry being involved, and as more and more technology is involved in warfare, we will need that muscle, otherwise we won't be able to sustain our strategic autonomy, because we have seen now 2-3 things in the wars that have happened. One is we've seen that there has been a threat on the sabotage, on the assets that we have. There is threat of denial, and all of this can rob us of our strategic autonomy when it comes to war. So I think what we bring in as a young generation, a young crop of businesses, is that we are bringing in that ability to be able to do that right from the grounds up in the country. And I think that pace is going to accelerate in an unprecedented way over the next few years.
Ankit makes a very important point here. It's the adaptability, and that is essentially during a war scenario. Air Chief, sir, I'd like to come to you with that. India's, and let's focus on India at this point. The escalation ladder mechanism. We saw India go up that ladder at such a fast pace in the matter of 4 nights. And we're referring to Operation Sindoor. We're going to be approaching the 1-year anniversary of the operation. Do you feel that is dependent war to war or adversary to adversary? If you can also give us a global perspective on what mechanism of escalation ladders looks like and how it's going to look like.
Yeah, I think you bring a very important point out. Part of our entire strategy planning and the way it was executed, I think one of the brilliant aspects was how the escalation was controlled. And for that, I think the basic essentials are a very clear-cut objectives, and the response itself was graded. And the time that you wanted to end, what happened on 10th, was taken to a level where it encourages and motivates the adversary to come to the table and call it off. So that is very important. We were able to achieve our objectives, demonstrate what we had to do, and also call it off. And I think that is one of the very, very critical areas that, that goes into planning or execution, particularly execution. If you see at the global level, and if you are referring to what is happening now, you see how US and Israel have gotten to, after the first week, they've continued to attack, and now it's a kind of escalation trap. They wanted regime change as one of the objectives. That hasn't happened, although there is a large-scale decapitation of the leadership. In spite of that, but the way it was worded, so now they are in their own trap. It is very difficult for them to finish. They will continue to escalate. And the war ending has actually shifted to Iranians. And they are able to extend the war by just low-cost drones and some ballistic missiles every day. So how long they will last, part of the control is shifted to Iranians. So escalation control has become a little difficult. So escalation control must be kept in mind. It's one of the very important parameters.
Understood. I'll here actually just bring in this point, and this is something you mentioned to me before we came in here, and I'd like to bring that part into the conversation. Today, we're seeing a war in Europe which has already entered its 5th year. We're seeing the war in West Asia, which was initially supposed to be on a timeline of 4 to 5 weeks. It doesn't seem to be at this point. That timeline seems to be shifting very fast. And you mentioned to me that it's not just about starting wars, it's actually about knowing when to stop them as well. And India demonstrated that. India called it off when the adversary called and asked for ceasefire. We agreed, and that's when we called it off. Do you feel countries today need to keep that in mind when we start? Because the escalation ladder can go up very fast, but when do you stop? And anybody can come in here, please.
Yeah, I think in your basic planning and what you want to achieve, it must be very clear. And what you state. So publicly at level, suppose Americans say something that we have gone into war for this, till that is achieved, it's very difficult to walk back. And now, if you again see the current conflict, till the time Hormuz gets opened, that control is currently with the Iranians. So unless massive effort is put by the US and Israeli forces in order to now get back the control of Hormuz, which is easier said than done. Their entire naval might of the US is there, and the Hormuz got closed. So you see the complications, you see the limitations, you see how some of their credibility is taking a hit, and of course they will do something to get out of it. Again, goes back to objectives. Their basic objectives are nuclear and ballistics and destruction of military capability. Regime change, if it was defined differently, they could have walked out of the war within a week. So it's very important for
clear
every
objectives.
countries. And the next thing is you have to now presume that every war can be extended. When you have low-cost options like loitering munitions, drones, a fair amount of autonomous vehicles, which can be a very low-cost option, countries can extend the wars, and therefore you need to be aware of your capability and how long can you sustain the war. So these are factors that go in.
Understood. Dr. Ramarao, we were discussing this, and you've been instrumental in bringing India's missile program where it is today. You've been the man behind the Akash missile, the BrahMos, the Astra. I wanted to understand from you, going forward, where things stand as of today, is India or any country, should they be looking at widening their missile arsenal, or is it more about low-cost, attritable assets? And I'll bring in Ankit a little later on that. What is the military arsenal going to look like in times to come?
See, there are two aspects. One is the weapon side, another one is the ecosystem that make the weapons operate. Weapon side means, as you say, missiles, for example, there are 5 characteristics: the range, the speed, the agility, the accuracy, and lethality. These are all weapon characteristics. All we have demonstrated in the last war that all the 5 characteristics are fully met. Now comes, how do you make these weapons effective in the battlefield? Here got we popularly known as C4I2SR. Command, control, communication, computers. These play a major role, like cyber security and all. Then intelligence and information. You should need information, what's happening at the adversary side, what's happening on our side, information. Then surveillance and recognition. These are 8 characteristics that will control the war. Even though you may have a very effective weapon with 5 characteristics, the 8 characteristics may make you deny the adversary what he wants to use, or they may try to see that I don't get surveillance data, I don't get navigation data. They may also try to deny. So denial will play a major role along with the weapon effectiveness. So we have to make sure weapons are made effective. The 8 parameters I told, they cannot be denied. We should have sufficient strength to make sure that our 8 characters fully available, so that the weapon and the operational system are matching with each other, and we will win any battle or any war. This is what we have to work.
Ankit, you had mentioned about adaptability. And we are going to be very responsible with this conversation without giving, and I understand you saw Operation Sindoor from a very different perspective and a very different proximity. Without giving out any details which compromise Operation Sindoor, which is on, I want you to just elaborate on how India adapted to the incoming hostile projectiles and the incoming hostilities in terms of its acquisitions in defense, in terms of what it looks for when it is looking for perhaps drones, which are a major part of our arsenal.
Yeah, no, I think in terms of adaptability, I think we've learned our lessons from what happened in those 4 days. And based on that, 2-3 things are very, very clear. Number one, any assumptions that we previously had that, the attack on us will happen in a specific domain, like for example, the assumption that the attack may come from a lot of low-cost commercial drones. That was thrown out of the window because many of the drones used were actually, some of them were Turkish drones and from other parts of the world, which were not using commercial frequencies. So if you had something that was detecting their incursion, then perhaps you would not be able to detect some of these incursions early enough, right? So therefore, wideband listening capability is going to become very important. That I think is a part of the set of procurements that would have happened post that. The ability to detect early enough is also equally important. So, and being agile or mobile with the location at which the detection capabilities are playing, again, another area that will have to be looked at very deeply. The other part is that whatever you are using to counter is also going to get similarly attacked or similarly rejected, and therefore all the assets that you're looking to get now will have to have resilience to at least electronic warfare, right? And making sure that any asset that is bought in the unmanned domain is capable of operating, even if it is denied particularly GPS and communication environment. So these are some of the basic requirements that will become part of every domain. Along with that, the upgradability of the system, the intelligence upgradation of the system is going to be another part that's going to happen, because unless you have that upgradability in field, you will not be able to use an asset and it will become obsolete very fast because the tactics will change. Last but not the least, in my opinion, there will be two areas that are going to be very critical going forward. One is that strategic assets will need to be extremely survivable because they are expensive, they are high technology, and they will have to be very survivable in such an environment. And number two, we will probably pivot extremely towards low-cost attritable systems, because anything that is one-time use, a lot more nuisance can be created to destroy the adversary's high-tech assets of one-time use assets.
And it's interesting you mention the terrain that is there in India, and who would be better than the three gentlemen here to understand what kind of terrain? Please, you want to add something?
I will just to add what Ankit is telling. See, the low-cost attack by, what do you call it, as a commercial, semi-commercial, the drones, for example, we may have to, as a country, as in whoever is there, has to have low cost. You can't use like you recently discussed, a Patriot missile you cannot use against a $10,000.
Exactly.
It looks illogical.
The economic asymmetry is glaring.
So we need weapons like laser-based weapons, microwave-based weapons, or any other weapons for where your cost per round or cost per engagement will be very low, very effective, very comparable. This is what is the type of a weapon that technology will give. Technology, India is already busy with developing technologies for this particular, our experience of the Operation Sindoor. In case of large number of attacks likely to happen, then we need low-cost, effective methods of defending by different methods of, may not be every time you don't use a missile, a laser weapon or a microwave weapon or any other technology. There are many technologies happening now. It will provide the answers.
And you know, a lot of defense analysts, military analysts, they also view that the time to come is not about high cost and high cost missiles. It's going to be about low cost military assets, which can be eliminated and at the point of attack or at the point of contact. Ankit, just one more aspect I wanted to bring from you. Where do you position India's indigenous military assets? Let's take drones first. When you compare it on the global stage, because we understand there are other countries who have really mastered the art of drone warfare. We're very much seeing it here in West Asia. Where do you place India in terms of our military assets that we're producing indigenously, drones for now?
See, I think one capability that we had to ensure that we develop from get-go is the ability to operate in extreme terrain and environmental conditions. In India, we have the extremes of very low temperatures in the northern part of the country, along with very high altitude, which is a very difficult terrain to navigate and to make systems that are delivering meaningful capability there. It is something may take off, something may operate there just by doing one hop, but that's not enough. Soldiers need capability that can ensure that they're able to get their job done. And therefore, that is not something which is very easy. This is not even anybody else's problem in the world other than our problem, and solving for that has been a cornerstone of how particularly the unmanned programs in the country have developed. And the demand on us is to be able to operate in very high altitudes and very low temperatures, down to -30, -40. We have to ensure that our operations can happen. Plus, we also have to make sure those assets can survive in the desert. They can survive in the marine environment. So we have, I would say, many countries have many environmental conditions, but no country has the kind of topographic diversity that we have, where we need to have our systems operate. So that is something very unique, and when we go and demonstrate our systems globally, it shows up really effectively. We are able to perform almost up to 90% of our stated capability in some of the most extreme environments.
And I'll come to Air Chief, sir. Military arsenal. In times to come, or I would say now, let's talk about now. The pulse right now, is it just about And this is what analysts suggest, that it's not just about how many missiles a country has or the variety of missiles, it's also the number of terabytes you're able to transfer per second that is going to determine the actual operational achievability of your objectives in any military domain. Would you concur with that? Would you agree? Or would you think there is still more time before we arrive at that kind of a scenario?
No, we are already there and we are already behind. So it's very much there. If you just take the lessons from Sindoor and what is happening now in this conflict, it's very clear which direction we are moving. And I think some of the technology issues we are asking for future, it is so important to bring in those technologies. For example, the AI, we haven't done much on our military side. I'm not talking of AI used in some autonomy or some kind of system. AI in overall military planning and execution, AI in decision-making support in its full form. Like as this is one of the transformative methods that was used in the current conflict. So this is very important. Similarly, our networks, our ability to process huge data, again, has to be AI enabled. Our entire ISR, space-based assets that you're talking of, are cyber information. So if you're talking of terabytes per second, it has to really grow. We have networks is going to be, and our ability there is going to be the core issue. And the next issue is how to make it secure.
Right.
So in time to come, our ability in terms of destructive capability, defense capability, and cyberspace and these networks capability would really mean a lot for the deterrence. Without that, you cannot have a robust deterrence.
Understood. Now, let me just come to a very important aspect, because this is something that we all felt we're about to run out of time. I'll quickly try to fit in two more aspects to the conversation, but I want to really touch upon. Narrative warfare. Do you feel during India's latest skirmish at this point, it was when the DGMOs came out, the uniformed men, operational men, when they spoke about what we achieved with the photographs and everything, that the entire country, I would say, and I'm being very brutally honest here, that we understood what India achieved. Do you feel that should have happened a little earlier? And I'm saying, let's look at how other nations are bringing out their achievability on the ground as it happens, compared to that.
Yeah, I think a lot has been said about narrative and whether we control it well in Op Sindoor. Just remember, there was a plan why the initial briefing was done by lady officers of the three services, because of the nature of response and the purpose of response, and why Op Sindoor came up at all. So the effect of that within the country was undeniable. It was great. There is always a time when the details of the operation would start getting covered in such briefings. Whether it could be a little early or a little later, it doesn't really matter. To me, it was done quite okay. Just remember, it is the adversary who loses depends on narrative war. Finally, when you have those satellite pictures, when you have the kind of damage, all 9 terrorist targets, the damage was shown. What narrative do you want? It is destroyed. It is there for you to see. You can go to any site which is not connected with our presentations and see it. So I think it's been overplayed.
Understood.
But it goes without saying that we have to pay more attention to our narrative formation, especially if it's going to be a long conflict. So narrative does play a huge part, but I am not of the opinion that we did much wrong or we went totally out in our narratives. The pictures was our narrative. Nobody can deny it.
Finally, I wanted to understand, anybody can come in here. We'll quickly try to get everybody's comments before we wrap up. And I started with this, the battle of the 5 Cs that we're already seeing across West Asia and parts of Europe. Are we, and economically we are facing repercussions, are we already in World War III? Anybody who would like to come into that?
No, we are not in World War III, but certainly the large portion of world is at war. But no, we are far away from 3 as yet. And whether it will go, we are heading there? To my sense, no.
What my own view is, World War III, as you are saying, no, things are happening. It gives a feeling that there may be a World War III. If at all somebody can stop the World War III, it's only India as a country. Because we are the one who believe in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, And today we are one of the probably the most respected country, respected leader who can handle this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Nobody will believe anybody else except Bharat to do this job. I think we will, if the right decisions are taken by the leaders, there won't be any World War III, and we will be the prime player to stop World War III and see that it won't happen. This is my assessment of the current scenario, geopolitical scenario.
Ankit, a quick word before we wrap.
I think, in my opinion, history will definitely treat this period as a high conflict period and a high kinetic conflict period. Conflicts have always been there, I guess, and therefore, whether it eventually gets badged as World War III or not is only going to depend on how many parts of the world simultaneously conflicts have erupted and have been sustaining.
So you mentioned Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That's also the ethos of the channel. Yes. World is one, and that's essentially what we've always tried. And I know before this you had mentioned to me about how Vion really has covered. We've seen war coverage all through the last 5 years. Since 2022, it has really dominated headlines across the world. Anything that you've observed in the way it has been brought forward on Vion?
No, I remember during Op Sindoor, your coverage was pretty good and pretty factual and, like I mentioned, low noise. I've seen some of your great programs on aviation and many of the defense industry related programs. Of course, we can do much more in terms of, I think, the focus shifting to Atmanirbharta. And if all of us put our attention there, that is the key. We're talking of deterrence. Our capability building and indigenous capability and true capability, not transfer of technology and setting up here. Indigenous design and development, something like this industry that is doing, and making, and the services and putting orders on our industry. So attention to those aspects on your channels will do a lot. I think the drive to place orders with our industry and make our industry grow and become Atmanirbhar in the true sense in defense and aerospace is very important.
Dr. Namarao.
Yeah.
I won't leave the chance to hear this from you.
No. I think Vion, you have the right theme. World is one nation. I think we have to keep that. And India has the capability to integrate the whole world because of our demographic strength and our demonstration of innovation and also technology development has supported it, and our economy has shown. I think Vion is the one which is really pushing it in the right direction. I think we wish Vion all the best, and we are part of it you, especially from the private industry who have come out with such a fantastic performance in all fields, especially aerospace. Private industry has come up so much. Probably, I think you have to focus on the private industry to bring them up to the nation level. I think it will happen. Success will come through.
Thank you so much for the words, sir. And Ankit, you had mentioned something. You can elaborate.
No, I think in the present environment, India has a need to not just look at what we are doing, but to get in both an outside-in perspective on where we are and to get the global perspective to us. I think Vion is a channel that we look forward to observing both of those aspects for the country.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. And just to let all our viewers know what you see on screens. Sir, you'd like to come in? If you can have the mic to him. It's for the audience, sir. We're live on the channel.
Thank you so much, sir. My name is Colonel Mayank Chaube, and my first question, when I say first, I mean I'll be asking two. So my first question goes to Air Chief Marshal Bhaduria, sir. Sir, I'm a firm believer that Operation Sindoor, we won hands down on ground. But when it comes to paper, we lost it. And the reason why I think that we lost it was that we could not penetrate the social media so well as our adversary could do that. And it was very evident. My suggestion would be that if in case we have a good youth pool in our country, if our forces engages this youth pool and pushes the narrative through that medium, that would be very helpful.
Chief, sir.
We can do much more. I agree with you, we can do much more. But I wouldn't go so far to say that on paper we lost it, because just remember, when you are winning and you are hitting and you're putting objectives and you're putting the proof on the social media, where it matters, it was very clear. And some people or some people who had doubts about it, when the other foreign think tanks started writing up a couple of months after detailed analysis, even those doubts, they started to listen more. Whether services can do more or should do more, or there should be a more proactive way, yes, we should. More so because it is changing rapidly. And with AI, and the moment we go to AGI and all, this whole aspect will become even more complicated. So we must step into it. We must step in. And with the latest of technology, it's an area that should be given attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. My second question goes to Dr. Ramarao. So there are many young minds which are working in various fields, and they have got tremendous ideas. But what we lack is a common email. Like, they have ideas for innovation. There was a youngster who came to me that he has designed a particular building which is blast-proof. Now, if you go through the DRDO route, I have to contact TBRL, then he has to do the trials. So it's a very long route. It's very difficult for a common man to go through that route. If in case the common Indian has got one email ID to hit, there may be 50,000 bogus ideas, but you can find one brilliant idea. So we should have one common email ID for every person on this earth, that, okay, any innovation concerning our defense forces should be shot onto that email.
Okay, yes, good. Right now, of course, there are platforms available for any common man to submit his idea, both for the three services, or DRDO or MOD. He or she can submit any great ideas to any of this. But there is no common single mail ID is not there. Probably the Ministry of Defense will notice Colonel Chaube's suggestion and see whether it can be integrated into one mail. I don't know. But right now there are platforms, there are mechanisms which any individual can give an idea to the government and get it recognized and get it implemented. That exists. But instead of multiple, can we have one? It's a point noted. Probably Vion will take the lead role and see that the MOD will bring one idea. Okay.
It's a good idea to put your thoughts. But I think the crux lies in ability to absorb and ability to implement. That is where we are lacking. Bright ideas, the kind of innovation taking place, but it takes so much time. We are not putting orders. So that is how we have to change ourselves. I think we should be able to take those ideas and implement it at super high speed.
So I got a question. I'm Major General Rajan Kocher, and I've got a question for you regarding drones.
Ankit.
I was actually studying the Iranian model today because everybody's talking, and they have got some lakhs of drones with them. And the first is the hardened, shelters they actually work in, because this GBU 57 also cannot, penetrate that area. Now, are we looking at hardened shelters, for our manufacturing processes? That is the first point of my question. And the second point is that, are we looking at volumes? See, we are manufacturing drones, and Idea Forge is doing a wonderful job. I've been following your organization. But the numbers are not there. So I just wanted to use that how these numbers can be multiplied, because we are actually fixated by specifications, and we actually bring very, very high-end specifications. It takes a lot of time. And then, certification is also a big problem. So these are the two areas I would like you to comment on.
So thank you so much, sir. And I think there are two aspects to consider here. One is distributed production, the merit of distributed production versus consolidated, high protected environment production eventually. I think one will have to think between the trade-offs of the two, because eventually somebody will always find something for a static location to be effective. So I think that's one question we'll have to answer. The second part of numbers, I think numbers is a question of the strategic direction that the government has to take for coming up with demand. we all can only produce when there is demand. Do we have the capability of producing? Yes, we have the capability of producing. Can that capability of producing be revved up overnight when there is a dry spell? No, it cannot be. So there are certain givens that we have to understand. We have to understand Iran did not have these thousands and Ukraine does not have these lakhs of drones because they overnight thought that they should be available. They're not going to suddenly present themselves. So they have to be built, and that planning has to happen, and that demand has to be there in the system. And it has to be consistent stockpiling for the kind of assets we want. And high technology, like I said, sir, high technology has to be survivable in the present world, including, for example, a laser weapon will have to be survivable because it can become a target once used. So therefore, survivability of a high technology asset is very critical going forward. If it is single time use, then it better be low cost because you are going to deploy it against a low cost adversary on the other end.
All right, I think that was a very engaging conversation for everybody. Thank you so much. We started with a message from the serving Army Chief. We'll now have a message to wrap up the session with a former Army Chief. Let's please have it.
Hello and welcome to the Vion Pulse Global Conclave on Defense and Deterrence, Future Warfare and Strategic Imperatives. The manner in which wars have been prosecuted have always been ever-changing, primarily driven by technological changes. From swords and shields to gunpowder and guns, and now artificial intelligence and autonomous systems. This ever-changing character of warfare merits the consideration of not only military professionals, but the body politic as a whole. No two wars or conflicts are the same, not only in the methods of war fighting, but in the strategic outcomes hoped to be achieved. I say hoped because conflicts always have unintended consequences which are difficult to predict or control. To that end, I am sure this conclave will generate a healthy debate that will be of immense value to all stakeholders. I wish Vion and all the participants all the very best. Jai Hind.
A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you, Shivan, for this insightful conversation. I now invite Mr. Raktim Das, CEO, Zee Media Corporation Limited, to please felicitate our panelists this afternoon. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. They have been candid. They've been very, very insightful as far as the defense sector is concerned, what it is right now and what it can become in the near future. Thank you, gentlemen. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we will break for lunch. Please join us again at about 2:45 when we resume our sessions.
Brought to its knees.
For WION, world is one.